Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock, I think, so the meeting has now started. The first thing before we get on to the agenda proper is a fire safety warning, which will be given to you by the officer.
Thank you, Chair. We are not expecting a fire drill today. Therefore, if the fire alarm does sound, we do need to evacuate. There are 2 evacuation doors in this room. The main one might be behind you, to the doors that you came in on. Go down the stairs and out the door there. And there is also a door at the side here. I will then ensure that everyone has been evacuated from the room. If anyone needs any additional assistance, if you could just indicate now, that would be quite helpful. Okay, thank you. And I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you. First of all, welcome here, everybody. Some of you will have not been here before. So should you need to use the toilets, there's a door there and a door there. If you go out of that door, you turn left. If you go out of that door, you go straight on. So please feel free to use those whenever you wish. We will have, depending on how long this meeting goes on, it's my normal practice to have a break, a comfort break at about 2 hours. But obviously I'll try and fit that in with what's going on. And also another thing which I'd like to tell you, you may be confused about all these people who are sitting here. My name is Bill Hunt. I'm the chairman. I've got David Brown, my vice chairman, who's here. The people who are along here are councillors, and they will be asking questions and making decisions. And over here we have officers, and we are blessed this afternoon with more than our usual legal officers and experts on planners, but we have the Highways Authority, the Transport Assessment Team, the Environment Agency, the Local Flood Authority, the Environmental Health and Ecology. They will advise us. They will not be making any decisions. It'd be nice if you could turn all your telephones off now, because I would hate to think of them going off. Because this meeting has generated a lot of interest, we made a decision quite recently to double everybody's speaking time. It's very difficult if somebody wants to get some more facts in. And then, of course, if it's fair, then the other side has to have a similar facility. So I made a decision that we would just double everything from normal. So every group of people now has 10 minutes in total instead of a 5 minutes, which is usual. The 10 minutes isn't a target, it is a maximum. I would like you to keep focused on your questions as you make them. And if you can answer them simply and quickly, it would be helpful. We have, I think that's all I've got to say. And I now move on to the apologies and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor Martin Goodall, who is substituted by Councillor Julia Huffer, from Councillor Christine Ambrose-Smith, who is substituted by Councillor Alan Sharp, and from Councillor Chika Akinwale.
Thank you. And declarations of interests. Councillor Whelan.
Agenda item number 5. I was a member of the Mirside PPG, and as I'm no longer a member, we're taking part in the discussion and vote.
Thank you very much. Any more declarations of interest? Yes.
I'm a county councillor, but I'm not involved in any committee or any decision making on this land.
I would also like to say that I'm a county councillor. I have discussed this with the monitoring officer, who is our legal advisor, and I was appointed by election in 2023. I've taken no part whatsoever in the county council's involvement in item number 4. and I'm approaching this meeting with an open mind, and I will be speaking as I elect, and speaking and voting as I feel correct. Have we got any more declarations of interest? No. Yes.
Sir Chairman, I'd like to raise a point of order, if I may, please, regarding conflict of interest.
You have conflict of interest.
I have no conflict of interest. I'd like to expose people who may have a conflict of interest. I'd like the opportunity to address you as that, and you can refute me, which will be fine, or you can accept my conflict of interest, please.
The members here, including myself, have declared made a declaration at the right time, and I can't see there would be any benefit in extending that item.
Well, my issue concerns membership of the Cambridgeshire County Council, who is the sole shareholder of this land limited. And I just felt as chair, you've been very magnanimous up to now, that it's necessary to ensure today's judgment to be perceived by the public, who indeed are looking now on the live stream, as to be wholly fair and unbiased. And if there are members of the planning application and planning committee who are members of the Cambridgeshire County Council, by deed of the fact that you are members of the Cambridgeshire County Council, you are representing the sole shareholder of this.
I have allowed you to speak out of turn, but I take on board what you've had to say. But I'd like you to take on board what was said by the members and myself, is that I've taken legal advice. I haven't been involved, and nor the other members here. They haven't been involved in anything to do with this item. They've made that declaration. They've said that they're approaching the matter with an open mind. That is what this committee will accept. So I will not allow any more interruptions. I will ask you to speak when it's your turn.
Thank you very much.
So we now go on to have any members here got any reason why at a later date I shouldn't sign the minutes?
We'll do that at the next meeting.
And which I will do at the next meeting. Is there any problems anybody got? No. Okay. We now move on to item number 4. And we have the officers to present item number 4.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I've just got a short update before we start item number 4, which is to do with the Soham and Barway Neighbourhood Plan. Officers provided an update on the status of the Soham and Barway Neighbourhood Plan at the time of writing within the policy section of both officer reports. In short, it said that the examiner's report in that neighbourhood plan was expected imminently. The examiner's report has now been received, and it has been formally agreed that it will proceed to a referendum. All of the modifications recommended by the examiner have been accepted in full by both Soham Town Council and East Cambridgeshire District Council. The official status of the plan has therefore now advanced to a post-examination stage. Officers have reviewed the agreed modifications and have concluded that these changes are not so significant that they would materially change the assessment of the planning application against each policy in the neighbourhood plan as set out within the officer reports as published. The modifications are, generally speaking, of a nature to ensure clarity of policy wording rather than fundamentally altering, adding or deletion of policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll now present item 4, but before I do so, I just need to correct a paragraph 1.1 of my report, please. Instead of reading legal services manager, it should read director legal. Apologies for that. And we've received one more letter from third parties, but the letter did not raise any new considerations which would alter my recommendation that you have in the report. The main consideration that will be the allocation of the site on the local plan in 2015. And I'll come back to that during my presentation as well. Item 4 relates to the development of part of the Soham Eastern Gateway allocation site as identified in policies SOH3 of the local plan in East Cambridgeshire. The purpose of this presentation is to provide a brief overview of the main considerations and to answer any questions that members may have, as my officer report, which was published, covers all relevant matters in full. You will have noticed that there are updates in relation to this application, and I will mention them during the presentation. I will present later a breakdown of the items forming part of this application in the next slides. I just would like to take this opportunity to show that's the full description on the screen. And there was just a slight mistake. Instead of Quaff and Common, which is reading as underlined, it was originally identified as East Fen Common. I would like to point out that this is an outline application, so mostly we'll be discussing general parameters and quantum of development to guide the next stages of reserve matters applications. All aspects have been reserved except for access, and there are four access points proposed with this application, including the main entrance from the roundabout at the A142. The details for phases 1 and 3B have also been provided with the submission. And for the reminder of the phases, all other aspects of layout, landscape, appearance, and scale will be detailed at reserve matters. A temporary permission for a construction road is also part of this outline application. This is the site in context with Soham Village and the Soham Conservation Area in shaded colors to the west of the site. Here is a bit more of a context of the showing of the site, showing the reminder of the allocation policy. I hope you can see the cursor. So this is the land between Cornut Close and the Quaff and Common. This is the former garden centre site, and this is the weather allotments. All form part of the allocation site in policy SOH3, but not part of this application. You will have seen yourselves this view of the site from the A142 and the view of St. Andrew's Church in the background. Here, these are other photos of the site for reference. You've seen the hedgerow that exists on the site along the boundary with the Quaff Fen that will be retained. The existing pros on the site. This is the one crossing in the north-south direction. Sorry. East-west direction, and this crossing the site on the north-south direction. This is the view from the Quaff and Common that we would have seen from the bus in the site visit this morning. A few more views of the site, the ditch that we stand on as well near the right-of-way number 66, the view of the back of the site, and a closer look at the residential units adjacent to the site towards the rear of the site. These are the surroundings of the medical centre and Brewhouse Lane. This is Brewhouse Lane looking towards Pratt Street. These are the public rights of way which will be improved if permission is granted. These are the allotments and the rights of way running adjacent to it, and as well as this one to the west of the allotments. This one, I hope you can see, this is right of way number 54, which will also be improved with the development if approved. Again, views of the Quaff and Commons and the East Fen Common you will have seen in this morning. So this is the breakdown of the proposal. As this is an outline stage, as I mentioned, we are assessing the quantum of development. So this will be for up to 540 dwellings with land for the relocation of the Stapler Medical Centre, up to 1,600 square meters of commercial services and business users and community users as well, all with associated highways and infrastructure works as along the new access on the A412, apologies, and other access points, 2 of them going to the other parts of the allocation site, and 1 of them going towards the Stapler Medical Centre, which would be depending on the redevelopment of that site to have the full link onto Brewhouse Lane and providing the Eastern Gateway as expected from the allocation policy. These are all considerations that you'll find on my report. Next is a table showing how the proposed development would deliver all aspects within the allocation policy, with the exception of the extension of the primary school, as the site is not adjacent to the school. The allotments will not be provided. It's been confirmed that the Weatherall's allotments will remain in place. And other uses which are more related with industrial and large storage units, which are considered to be more appropriate in the former garden centre that forms part of the allocation site, is also not part of this application. As I said, normally in an outline, we will be talking about parameters in general terms, which will guide the reserve matters. This is one of them, which is the land use, and showing in light brown the residential uses, in red the mixed use area where the medical center would be located, and in green the main green infrastructure, which also form the phases 1 and 3B that we'll be talking about in this presentation. The parameters give us an idea of how the site would be occupied, but the precise areas of residential use will be confirmed at reserve matters when we expect to have more information regarding flood risk and noise in particular. There is an area of high risk of flooding, and we were hoping, it is a possibility that this area can change in the future. Next is the access and movement parameter plan, showing the main access road from the roundabout, the road links, which are these green ones, and the access points, which are indicative at this moment. The access points will aim to ensure that the remainder of the site is developable and that the site forms a gateway into Solom, as previously mentioned. The link into Brewhouse Lane, which is this one, has been tested in terms of impact on the road network, and mitigations would be secured with permission if members agree with the officer's recommendation. The link, however, as I previously pointed out, will depend on the redevelopment and the closing of this gap into Brewhouse Lane, to link with Brewhouse Lane, sorry. I note also that these parameter plans aim to secure the public rights of way, which will be retained and enhanced on the site, and also indicates the location of the rights of way which are proposed with this application. The details of this each of these specific rights of way in terms of the status, either footway or bridleway, is part of a discussion that is ongoing with the Highways Authority at the moment, and the details would have to be conditioned, and a pros plan will be approved with consultation with the Highways Authority in the future as well. Next is the green infrastructure parameter plan, showing the hedgerows to be retained in darker green, and indicative locations of areas of play, and as well as elements of SUDs as part of the drainage strategy, the sustainable drainage system elements, including a swale in blue here in the center, and the attenuation basins. These green areas form parts of phases 1 and B, which, as I said, are detailed at this stage. The landscape details of these areas, 1 and 3, will have to be submitted in the future, and we are proposing that they are secured through condition as well. At the moment, we would be approving the road design for the roundabout and the main access road. However, through the Highways Work Section 278 agreement, slight changes can happen to the design of this road. We are also approving the drainage strategy as a whole, but also specific technical details for the main SUDS elements, as I mentioned previously. In terms of PNG, the site has capacity to deliver more than 10% biodiversity net gain, and despite not securing the expectations of the neighbourhood plan for a 20% gain, The proposal will include up-to-date arrangements, including a habitats management and monitoring plan, and other biodiversity enhancements that will be secured by Section 106 and conditions. It's important to note that the submission is prior to the 10% gain becoming mandatory, as well as prior to the neighbourhood plan. And notwithstanding this, the applicants have agreed to secure the monitoring plan, which enables the council in making sure that the gains are measurable and effectively managed and achievable. The final parameter plan is the one on the screen, which is the building heights parameter plan, guiding the assessment of density and overall massing and scale for the next stages. The heights will range from from 2 stories in yellow, going up to 2.5 in orange, and then 3 and 4. 4 is the purple one in the center. There's also a view corridor that we are trying to secure through this parameter plan to ensure that there is the view of the St. Andrew's Church Tower is protected. The housing mix at this stage is not fixed, but that we use an indicative mix to understand how the development would be accommodated on the site and how it would deliver the equivalent infrastructure. It will need to meet, the development will need to meet the housing needs when proposals come forward to approve the reserve matters. And in that sense, we know that the neighbourhood plan for Soham indicates a different mix of views, including a different tenure split. All these requirements could be tested as the neighbourhood plan itself allows through the review mechanism, which will need to be secured with this application due to the lower levels of affordable housing provision. These are the main elements which would be secured by Section 106 agreement, including aspects of housing and infrastructure, as well as community facility and others. And in summary, we have considered that the main aspect linked to the principle of the proposal, which is the delivery of housing and other elements of the SOH3 allocation policy, have been achieved. We are confident that the flood risk can be managed and a sequential approach can be taken on the next stages of the planning process. And in terms of transport impacts, all of them, including to roads and to the existing public rights of way, have been considered, and appropriate mitigations agreed with the highest authority at this point. And it is acknowledged, although, that a lower level of affordable housing will be provided. However, this will continue to be confirmed the viability with each reserve matters application. Officers are confident that the site can accommodate more than 10% biodiversity net gain, which is a requirement, as I said, coming into force after the submission of this application. Nonetheless, the applicants have offered to have a habitat management and monitoring plan secured, which is the most updated tool set to ensure that the gain is effective. For these considerations, we recommend that the application is approved, subject to the conditions and planning obligations on the report and the update sheet. Thank you.
Thank you very much for an excellent and comprehensive report. It's much appreciated. And I think you have stressed it 2 or 3 times, but of course, this is an outline planning application. I've got one request for some of the officers that are here today. We've got many more officers than we would normally have. So I wonder if before you speak, if you could just say who you are and what your interest is before you start answering any questions or making any points. Thank you. So we now move on to the objectors, and there's a lead speaker, which is Hamish Ross, who I believe is Councillor Hamish Ross as a parish councillor. So you have 10 minutes, councillor, and you can start now.
Thank you, Chair. Reasons why this planning application should be refused. Please note that this proposed development is in a unique, historically important and sensitive setting, so much so that this planning committee has never had to pass judgment on such an ecologically important and sensitive area. It is sandwiched to the north and south by two ancient and protected commons and has a triple SI in the immediate vicinity. The Wildlife Trust agrees that the scale of the proposed development will pose a significant risk to the protected commons and wildlife. This application has a negative effect on the commons, environment, and ecology. Dr. Alan James of the Campaign to Protect Rural England states, looking at the landscape guidance of the 2015 local plan, provides the following information. Under Policy Growth 3, Infrastructure Requirements states, strategic green infrastructure improvements as outlined in the Cambridgeshire Green Infrastructure Strategy, including the provision of Ely Country Park and Blockfen Nature Reserve, improvements to Soham Town Commons and the Ouse Corridor and the Wicken Fen Vision. This particular development can hardly be described as such an improvement. On page 101 of the local plan, Soham Town Commons are listed as one of several key strategic area projects of the district's strategic green infrastructure. Paragraph 763 states, development proposals which harm these and other strategic sites and networks will be resisted. Permission will only be granted in exceptional circumstances where it can be demonstrated that the need for and the benefits of development outweigh adverse impacts. On the same page, Policy Com 5, Strategic Green Infrastructure states, proposals which would cause loss of or harm to existing strategic green infrastructure will not be permitted unless the need for and the benefits of the development demonstrably and substantially outweigh any adverse impacts on the green infrastructure. Furthermore, item 8 of the Soham Vision in the local plan states, protect and enhance the unique green setting of Soham, including the commons and green network links. This application has an adverse effect on the residential amenity of neighbours by reason of noise, lighting, disturbance, overlooking, and loss of privacy. As regards noise, in January 2024, ECDC commissioned MAS Environmental Limited to provide a review of the noise assessment work carried out by SES Environmental. With regard to noise, an independent lead consultant and acoustician with MAS Environmental Limited states, the Stansted Environmental Services Limited, CECIL, conclusions, as submitted by the applicant, are strongly rejected. You do not have to be a noise expert to understand that the advice given to ECDC and Mr. Smith in his capacity as EHO, advising in relation to noise matters by MAS, is in direct conflict to the EHO's consultation response and advice he gives in his final consultation comment on the noise. At best, this is extremely disappointing. At worst, Mr. Smith runs the risk of misinforming the planning officer and planning committee members that noise is not a reason to refuse this application. The facts here are that two acoustic professionals, Mr. Keith Metcalf and MAS Environmental, formerly on behalf of ECDC, have consistently indicated that the noise assessment work by CECIL is fundamentally flawed. The planning officer's report does not reflect in any way the professional acoustic advice contained within the MAS Environment Review. The officer's commentary, paragraph 5.1, seems to rely on other residential developments adjacent to the 142, rather than the information provided in the now known to be technically flawed assessment by CES that accompanies this land's application. Mr. Metcalf's professional acoustic consultancy practice provided the noise assessment for the Blackberry Lane residential development, which is less than a mile to the south of the Eastern Gateway site. This development required significant noise mitigation measures to provide suitable site for residential development. How can it be that for the Eastern Gateway proposal that none of the same type of mitigation is proposed by this land when the principal noise source affecting the two sites is the same, which is the traffic on the 142? Mr. Metcalf goes on to say at paragraph 5.102, the planning officer mentions that further noise surveys will be undertaken at the detailed design stage. However, how can ECDC permit a development in outline when the noise assessment work that accompanies the application is so fundamentally flawed that the EHO cannot possibly claim that CES have demonstrated that noise concern has been addressed? Further issues to consider about the refusal, this application has a significant visual impact on the surrounding protected commons and is totally out of character. For instance, the design and height compared to neighbouring flat common landscape and structures. Consider the effect of the development on the character of the neighbourhood. Campaign for Rural England considers that this proposal represents an unacceptable loss of accessible green space and public right-of-ways within Soham, which will have a seriously negative effect on the well-being of the community. CPRE is concerned by the effect of this proposal on sites of historical landscape significance bordering the town of Soham. CPRE is concerned that evaluation of the effect of this proposal on local ecology and protected species has been so dependent upon inaccurate and artificial numerical methods that the true effect on local ecology has been completely missed. CPRE is concerned that surface water management proposals will be inadequate and flooding a real risk due to the rapidly increasing effects of climate change. Significant areas of the site are in flood zones, and local residents living near the site report that they can no longer obtain flood insurance, for example, East Fen Common. Local experience is not consistent with the applicant's statement that it can therefore be concluded that risk of surface water flooding is very low. The applicant states he will deal with surface water runoff by means of sustainable drainage systems. CPRE doubts very much that these systems in this floodplain, no matter how well modelled and designed, will be capable of coping with the steadily increasing intensity of rainfall or the rising groundwater levels due to hydraulic pressure from sea level rise that are occurring. Other issues: the loss of existing views from neighbouring properties would adversely affect the residential amenity of neighbouring owners. The existing sewerage system, in particular the pumping station at the bottom of Bushell Lane, cannot cope at times. How on earth is this pumping station going to be coping with the addition of 570 houses? The development would adversely affect highway safety and the convenience of road users. The proposed use of Brewhouse Lane as an access road is unacceptable. The road is too narrow in a high-density residential area with vehicles parked on both sides of the road. The junction with Paddock Street is an unacceptable pinch point that directly threatens road safety. This route has already been recognised by ECDC previously for its shortcomings, and yet it has been resurrected today. The fact remains that there is no direct vehicle access to Soham from the proposed development. This was one of two indelible requirements set out in the local plan and vision that this development must deliver. It is therefore nothing more than a cul-de-sac development bolted onto the east of Soham. May I remind the committee that a developer lost an appeal to build only 70 new homes in Haddenham, as, in their words, it would have a major adverse effect on the character and appearance of the area. The authority's decision document read, the proposed development would create another cul-de-sac development on the edge of the village, which is poorly connected and would not create a distinctive addition to the village, nor retain open rural views. Councillor, a precedent has therefore been set. This proposed development is no different, other than it is 8 times larger than that refused in Haddenham. Returning to the theme of a gateway, this term suggests a major focal link into the town from the east. Yet it is not a direct vehicular link, nor has the typical character of a gateway scheme, providing no benefit whatsoever to the existing hard-pressed retail units on our high street. It is simply a roundabout and a road into a housing development. The term gateway is a misnomer and should be dropped together with this application. Thank you for listening to these views held by 98% of those formerly consulted as Soham residents. This has also been confirmed by numerous petitions lodged with the District Council in previous years and can be found, if you have the time and patience, amongst the 1,116 documents pertaining to this development on the ECDC website. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that comprehensive speech. And members, have you any questions now that you'd like to ask for Town Councillor? Any Councillor Trabb?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I suspect it's sort of the result of many other consultations of others. One thing you mentioned, which was noise mitigation at the site just south of the current site?
Yes, correct. It's Blackberry Lane site.
How much do you think that noise been affected by being close to a roundabout, or is it not close to a roundabout?
That particular development isn't close to a roundabout. The details with reference to noise are very thick, but certainly the consultants who are experts say that the presence of a roundabout on the proposed development, which would make sense, would actually increase the noise by the acceleration and deceleration to a roundabout.
I concur with that, having slept once on a bend in Kimbolton, where the truck slowed down and then accelerated away, 2 bends actually. So one had the joint thing. So yeah, so that's one thing. The other one question I have is about you say about flood insurance, that certain residents there are not. Is it quantifiable? Is it possible to say, is it 1, 2, many? Or, I mean,
Sorry, Councillor, I haven't got the numbers, but certainly there's more than one property that falls into that case. My next door neighbour is frequently flooded, and he's on Quayfen Common, which is going to be right adjacent to the development, overlooking the development will overlook because he is below the level of the ground level of the proposed development. So he will be overlooked. He's flooded regularly, and this will only continue. And that's from surface water from existing SOAM sites, not the development.
yes, I did notice there was some residual water there between some of the houses this morning when we went there. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Any questions for the objectors? Just one thing, Councillor Ross. Did I hear in your speech that you were talking about 570 houses?
I may have said 570. If that is incorrect, 540, then it is still far more than is there already. I do have copies of my objections if councillors would like to take it on board.
So you're saying you aren't sure whether I just picked up that you were talking about 570, and
I stay with 570. I'm fairly sure that's what it is, but if it is 569 or 540,
so it's the same answer whether it's 5.
It's the same argument. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. We now have the applicants to speak, please. I think. Yes. Hold, we're just going to wait a minute till we get. It does make it very much easier for the administration here to record what was said if copies of speeches are left with her. Okay, so I've got down here Richard C. Mark of Carter Jonas, is that right? Okay, Louisa Wood from Staplow Medical Centre, and also present for questions Tom, Khalid, Annabelle, Alan and Ashley. Is that correct? Well, okay. I don't think there's room for you all to sit there. So if you'd like to make your presentation as an applicant, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, councillors. I'd like to start by expressing our gratitude to officers for their significant efforts in bringing this complex planning application to committee, with a recommendation for approval reflected in the comprehensive committee report before us. There have been a lot of changes to consider since the original scheme was submitted in 2019, but we believe it's been worth taking that time to understand and find solutions for the various concerns raised, so that we can now present a master plan we believe will play an important role in the growth and evolution of SOAM. Officers have worked closely and constructively with the applicant team throughout the process and have scrutinised and challenged our proposals at all key decision-taking stages. This has culminated in there now being no technical objections to the planning application. This planning application will deliver a significant amount of the SOH3 allocation, which has been adopted since 2015. It will help to create a new accessible community on the eastern edge of SOAM, consisting of 540 new homes that includes 108 affordable and 27 self-built homes, a mixed-use neighbourhood hub that proposes a new medical centre, a pharmacy and children's nursery, along with other commercial uses set out within the allocation. A new roundabout on the A142, as required by SOH3, will serve the wider allocation and is also future-proof to enable the employment allocation on the eastern side of the bypass to come forward at the relevant time. The planning application also makes provision for the remaining elements of the allocation, with access provision made to the Bishop Laney land that lies between Bushell Lane and Queensway, which is expected to complete the housing requirement for SOH3. It also makes provision for access to the former garden centre land, to enable that to come forward for B2, B8 uses as envisioned in the policy. For clarification, the planning application is not proposing new vehicle access points onto East Fen Common, Quai Fen Common or Cornwall Close. A key challenge throughout the planning process has been the issue of secondary vehicle access to the town as proposed by the allocation. Whilst the local highways authority has confirmed that a single point of access via the roundabout would be technically acceptable, the applicant has nonetheless undertaken extensive work with Mearside Medical to develop a solution for relocating the Staplow Medical Centre into Surrey Eastern Gateway in order to provide a new purpose-built medical centre and utilise the existing site for a new secondary access point onto Brewhouse Lane. This secondary access arrangement is included within the medical centre application that will be considered by this committee after this agenda item. A direct connection from the A142 to the medical centre will reduce existing trips through the town centre from surrounding villages. Pedestrian and cycle connectivity in and around the site will be enhanced through improvements to existing public rights of way, including resurfaced paths between Cornwall Close and Queensway, along the eastern edge of the Wetherall School and from the edge of Kent's Lane, and new publicly accessible foot and cycle paths throughout the development to promote safe, sustainable travel. New bridleway paths are also proposed around parts of the perimeter of the site for potential connectivity to a wider network in the future. The planning application is considered to exceed policy requirements for public open space by providing 6.3 hectares on site and £220,000 for sport provision off site, the equivalent of 1.5 hectares of football pitches. In terms of biodiversity, ecological surveys have been carried out for the planning application and have informed an assessment of potential impacts and need for mitigation within the environmental statement. A biodiversity net gain assessment has also been provided, which demonstrates that the minimum of 10% BNG will be exceeded for habitat units and significantly exceeded for hedgerow units and watercourse units. All of the information has been reviewed and verified by Natural England, the Wildlife Trust and the Council's senior ecologist. We recognise and understand the concerns raised by residents to ensure appropriate consideration is given to protecting the qualities of the commons, and measures will be placed on any permission to ensure this is done. As this is an outline application, detailed plans and strategies will still need to be developed to ensure protection and enhancement of species and habitat. A series of suggested actions have been made as outlined in the proposed conditions, such as updating ecological surveys at each residential reserve matters application, agreeing a habitat management and monitoring plan, and agreeing detailed soft landscape plans to secure an appropriate specification of native trees and hedges. A financial contribution in line with the recommendations of the Surrey Common Study will be made by Section 106 for management and maintenance to mitigate impacts on the commons from new residents and domestic pets, which could fund new dog bins, fencing, cattle grids and ecological enhancements. External lighting will need to be submitted and agreed to minimise light pollution onto the commons. It is, however, noted that the landscaped corridors of approximately 20 plus metres to the site will offer some degree of mitigation from the outset. To finish, this is a site that's been allocated as Surrey's largest new housing scheme since 2015, and it's been the subject of extensive consultation before and during this period. We have, for example, held over 10 separate consultation events with residents and businesses of Surrey, attended design workshops with officers, attended a quality review panel, and have made significant changes during the application to find solutions for the various concerns raised. It is considered that this planning application will provide social, economic and environmental benefits to the town, and respectfully ask councillors to support their officer's recommendation for approval, which will be the first step in delivering a brand new medical centre and pharmacy for Soham and surrounding constituents, new mixed-use hub for preschool, local food shop and other expected uses such as office space and dentist, more than 80 new permanent jobs created, 540 new homes, including 108 affordable homes, 15 acres of public open spaces and new play and recreational areas, and £220,000 to fund local sports facilities, multi-million-pound SIL contributions to fund local infrastructure and facilities that we encourage to allocate towards both the new medical centre and Soham Village College. A proportion of the SIL receipt will be paid to the town council. £337,000 transport contribution that could be spent on safety improvements on the bypass and local roundabout capacity enhancement, approximately £70,000 to protect and enhance the commons, and over £80,000 libraries contribution. I'll now quickly hand over to Louisa Woods of Mearside Medical to summarise the position of the new medical centre.
Thanks, Richard. Good afternoon, councillors. Mearside Medical, the GP partnership providing services at Staplow Medical Centre, has spent over 13 years seeking a fit for purpose, fit for the future building to serve our growing patient population in Soham and the surrounding areas, including Chippenham, Fordham, Isleham, Upware and Wycombe. This task is challenging due to our growing population, substantial space requirements and strict regulatory constraints. After exploring many options, including extending our current practice, we've concluded that the only viable solution is to build a new facility in a nearby location with room for future expansion. Soham Eastern Gateway offers exactly this opportunity. We must emphasise two crucial points. Firstly, the medical centre project depends entirely on Soham Eastern Gateway's approval. Secondly, further delays will negatively impact our existing service. The time pressure that we are now facing is immense. We are serving 24,000 patients from a building designed for 13,000 patients. We are now intolerably limited in the services that we can offer, including the number of face-to-face consultations that we can offer each day. It is critical that new premises are built and operational as soon as possible. Our proposed new medical centre will have the capacity to serve up to 32,000 patients and be extended further in the future as required. The proposal has broad support from 4 parish councils, including Soham Town Council, Soham Ward councillors, then MP Lucy Fraser, and the NHS Integrated Care Board. After 13 years, we are delighted that Soham Eastern Gateway now has recommendation for approval. This is essential for securing appropriate healthcare facilities for our growing population. As your local healthcare provider, we are grateful to members for considering our position in the context of this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for both your reports. And now members, questions for the applicant. Away you go.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, and it's touching on a comment you've made, and is that you're saying that the Staplow Medical Centre depends on the Soham Eastern Gateway to develop, and obviously, yes, we all want better medical facilities, blah blah blah. But surely the reverse is true, because I want to ask highways officers questions later. But part of the issue I've got with this application is the access into Brewhouse Lane. So by knocking down the medical centre, that still doesn't solve the problem, but it creates. So I think the two are independent, surely. It may not be a question that you're able to answer, but.
So just so I've understood the question correctly, you're asking why the new medical centre is entirely dependent on the Soham Eastern Gateway? The answer to that is that the land allocation for the new medical centre is contained entirely within the Soham Eastern Gateway location. There is no other plot of land in or near to the existing site in Soham that is large enough or accessible for us to relocate to. We have explored all of the options over the last 13 years, and it is the only viable site that we can entertain or practically deliver on. But that land will and can only be offered once Soham Eastern Gateway receives outline approval and the Section 106 agreement, which stipulates the offer of land to be made, is put into force.
Councillor Trout.
Thank you. I have a number of questions, both for Louisa and, sorry if you don't mind me calling you by your first name, Miss Wood and Mr. Seaman. What? Seamuck. All right, okay. If you say so. Miss Wood, you say that this facility is also used by Fordham and Chippenham. Is that that's quite a further field? Well, have we not? Is there not a consideration of actually building something closer in Chippenham or Fordham for those residents? I mean, they have to come quite a long way to get to this. It might be better to actually, if you're, having a different medical practice further afield. That's one thing I think. I'm not sure. I like the threat of saying that's the only way we can expand. All right, coming back to Mr. Seamuck, number of things there. Self-build, you say self-build. Will that be providing the services such as drainage and electricity on site, or is it just going to be a plot of land and you find your own things?
Yes, there'll be service plots, so it's likely to be clusters of self-build units.
Okay, I've been looking into self-build plots in this district because I was interested in actually buying one myself, and found that the cost of them would far exceed, plus building on them, would far exceed actually buying a house on that estate. So I'm not sure about that thing. All right. Gateway, I'm looking at that and fine, it does seem to be, I'm not sure. I mean, if I were in Soham and I wanted to turn right onto the A142, I'd actually drive through this estate because it's a nice roundabout at the end, as opposed to risking my life or whatever it is. Rather, I think it's quite a nasty junction, that one, just south of that. So this will provide lots of far more traffic to Brewhouse Lane. And I'm not sure that is possible, actually. The other one I have, I'm thinking the idea of fast food as being the operative thing is, I'm sorry that fast food is sort of as a sort of nice thing to have. I'm sure it should not be one of the important considerations. Anyway, coming back to the noise mitigation, why is it that the noise mitigation submitted probably by you, I don't know, or which was remarked upon by Hamish Ross about the fact that at a state further down, there was far more noise mitigation required, and that was on a straight bit of the A142 rather than vehicles slowing down for the roundabout and accelerating away, which is going to happen right in the middle of this. So can you ask about what kind of noise mitigation assessment you had and why it's different to whatever was submitted for the other estate?
Okay, I'll take the noise mitigation question.
Thank you.
So our report that has been prepared is obviously for the outline, and so therefore it's been done based on parameters and where the housing line will sit. The minimum distance of that is 68 metres setback from the A142, which is vastly more considerable than the site further to the south, which is the main reason that there is such a significant difference in the noise modelling, which shows that the impact will therefore not be inappropriate upon those dwellings. That will be 68 metres at the shortest point. Regarding your point with acceleration and deceleration, I understand that concern. Our evidence that has been provided by SES suggests that because overall the speed will be lower using traffic measures, and that will be secured by Section 106, the noise generated from that stretch of road would be decreased.
Thank you. You have a further question or not?
I thought, right. Can I just control the meeting, please, councillor Trapp?
Yes, you can
Thank
if you want to.
The
Yes.
planning
Yeah.
manager had something to say.
Yeah, it was just as a general point, really. This is an outline application, as has been mentioned frequently. Things like mechanical, things to control noise within dwellings and things like that will be looked at a reserved matters stage rather than an outline stage. Because obviously at the moment, we don't know the layouts, we don't know the designs of the building, the construction methodology, whether or not they're passive house, etc., etc., etc. All of those things would be considered at the reserved matter stage. What members need to satisfy themselves today is that we are able to come to a scheme which we are able to have at an acceptable level of noise, and not necessarily the nuts and bolts of that information at this moment in time. Thank you.
Has that answered your questions, councillor Trapp?
It has answered that particular. Can I ask a further question?
Yes, you can answer one more.
Thank you very much. I'm very concerned about the only 20% affordable housing. Normally in this district, we've looked for 30%. We've actually only built 18% so far because of various other ways. So 20% affordable, considering that even now, the part of the proposal is looking at flats. So one has quite a high density of certain parts of this location, and we cannot provide more than 20% affordable housing. I find this sad. I find this, we should be looking into this. We can't be doing this. We can't provide flats. I understand this idea that if it's separate housing, maybe the density will be, but this is quite a big density. And if we can only afford 20%, I'm sorry, I think that's very poor. Why only 20% housing affordable?
So if I may, I think the agenda actually lists the advantages that are coming to this site, and a glance through the agenda, which would see the sums of money that are payable to support the commons and the schools and the library, would answer that question, councillor Trapp. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to agree that 20% has been shown as the maximum viable amount of affordable housing on this scheme due to the significant amount of infrastructure needed as part of this scheme, as part of the allocation, including new roundabouts, highways, medical centres and mixed-use hubs. To manage to be able to deliver also 20% affordable housing is, I think, is quite a good achievement here, and that's been backed up and agreed with the viability report.
Thank you very much, councillor Lay.
Yes, I'd like to just take up that point. We're saying 20% affordable housing, 78% of them will be shared purchase, and 22% will then be for rental. I don't know whether, as councillors, we realise that we have almost 1,000 people on our housing waiting list to rent a property, and this scheme, as it stands at the moment, looks as if it will only provide 24 houses for rental, and that certainly isn't enough.
So it's the other way around. So it's 77% share social rent and 23% shared ownership.
Yeah.
That,
Thank you.
we have an expert opinion on this. It's on the board. I think that's answered that question. Have we any more questions? I think the word sorry might come in. Have we got any more questions for the applicant? No? Okay, well, you can go back to your seats if you want. I'm sorry we didn't ask for involve the people who are here, but it's a fact that they were willing to answer questions. Thank you. We now have Town Councillor Alec Jones. And I was going to invite the two of you separately, but if you'd like to sit down together, that would be fine.
Shall I start, Chair?
Please go at your leisure.
Thank you. Okay. So Soham Town Council has many concerns and does object to this development. That's not a surprise, I'm sure. And whilst many of our residents object to this development, and they have spoken well for themselves, these comments are only from the Town Council themselves. So as a representative of the Town Council, we feel this still fails to address many of the concerns that the Town Council has. The development has been a long time coming, and this is primarily because it's been unable to make any solution work for this site. While it's made some progress on technical aspects by means of an outline application, but by means of an outline application, it's kicked many of our concerns into the long grass. Into long grass by putting it under reserved application matters. I'll just stick to my notes really, rather than trying to read from you. Anyway, right. And of course, this does not provide any reassurance to the council. As historically, in some of the town's previous developments, problems have resulted with solutions what can only be best described as botched, okay, particularly with things like drainage and stuff. Anyway, right, nonetheless, obviously you can see our comments, so I can direct you to them on page 45 of your folders. These are the ones we will try and confine ourselves to. So officers have mentioned the public rights of way, and obviously we would like to make sure they're accurate and they need clarification in the wording and addressing in general. Obviously, I'm sure these will be tidied up. Rest assured, the council will be continuing to comment on the reserve matters application when it does come, including building heights and trees, etc., as Hamish had outlined previously. On this point, the Town Council would like to show its disappointment in the application before it comes to reserve matters meeting. To be noted that only accepting 20% social housing when the neighbourhood plan specifically asks for 30. The proposal seems unable to meet our neighbourhood plan and in providing our social rent, although that looks as though it's slightly adjusted, but obviously if we've got a smaller amount, because social rent is a key employer, agriculture is a key employer, and low rents are social rents. Agriculture is typically low wage, and obviously it would be nice to see plans that support the local families who reside in the area with rents and house prices that are affordable, as they continue to soar currently. We would like to draw your attention to the following parts that have been mentioned in this, okay, and I know some of them have been addressed. Okay, the connection to the town, there's a lack of detail on Cornwall Close and Brewhouse Lane and Scottsdale site. Obviously, these are coming to the reserve matters. Are these suitable access points? Okay, you've had an opportunity to see these this morning and the way they work. We have asked for a new transport service to be undertaken. Obviously, and again, my clerk constrains what I'm allowed to say on many of the aspects that I'd like to enhance upon. Okay, but we would like to see a new transport survey. Flooding. So while the lead flood authority and the Environment Agency have removed the ejection through conditions, in accordance with the SHO3 and the Environment 8, which talks about protecting properties, the matter has been raised in some of the reports about potential flooding further downstream. It's vital that the technical solutions that are given are robust enough to ensure this is not the case. Ecology, while the report shows evidence that the planners are looking to protect the ecology of the site, the council is just disappointed by its acceptance of any 10% net biodiversity gain. Policy SMP 12, the Soham and Barway neighbourhood plan, states that a minimum biodiversity of net gain shall be developments, shall be qualifying for development. Get my words out. The minimum biodiversity net gain for all qualifying developments shall be 20%, okay, rather than the national mandatory 10%. Okay. The BNG is not only important in replacing what's lost, but also some of the key outstanding concerns of this report is the potential impact on development of the neighbouring commons. The commons are a part of Soham's historic and continual identity. Okay, the introduction of more houses, vehicles and pets will have a dramatic effect on the ability to continue the commons well-being and its status. It is in jeopardy, the status, if the commons deteriorate. As a report points out, for example, that the predatory nature of some pets will harm indigenous life, wildlife and damage rare plants situated on these protected areas. This is not only probable, but acknowledged in your reports. Okay, in conclusion, the Town Council upholds its objection to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holden.
I have nothing to add. The statement that was read out by Councillor Jones was approved by Soham Town Council, and as such, the contents of it was drafted between myself and Councillor Jones, and he's presented it on behalf of both of us, but I'm here to assist with answering any questions.
Members. Questions for Soham Town Council. Councillor Trapp.
Thank you, Councillors Jones and Morgan, for your presentation. There has been concern raised by one of the objectors about the traffic that this might generate down, is it Brewhouse? I'm just looking at the map, Brewhouse Lane, yeah, and other places where we did go by a minibus today, but it was a bit tight. Do you know the concerns about this or not? Have you any?
Yes, I'm able to answer that question. If you refer to the November 23 Cundall report, in there, it suggests that 3.5% of traffic flow from the new development will go through to the town centre. The response from Cambridgeshire County Council Highways was they disputed this figure and said the figure was more near 10%. And then there was some exchanges between the two parties, but there's never been a resolution to say whether or not 3.5% is right or 10% is right. And the matter now appears to be very quiet on both sides.
One of the questions I proposed to developers or put forward to developers was that this would be seen as a cut through to the A142, which was safer than others from centre of Soham to the A142. Would you think that would be right?
Well, again, you appreciate I'm not a transport expert personally, and so therefore I can only refer to the information from the experts on the one side on behalf of the developer Cundalls, and on the other side Cambridge Council Highways. And as I said previously, there appeared to be a dispute between the two parties as to the amount of traffic flow coming from the site through to the town centre. I live in Soham. I can only speak of my own personal circumstances, and even now when visiting the medical centre, I don't come through the town centre. I come through on the A142 bypass and in past East Fen Common onto Paddock Street and then Brewhouse Lane because it's quicker. So that's as much as I can answer.
Thank you very much. The other one I have a question about is employment. We're looking at 500 dwellings here, or over 500 dwellings. Is there much employment needed in Soham? Is this going to be commuting, do you think?
Again, one can speculate as to the amount of employment that may or may not arise of this. In terms of the construction, I understand that local builders will be employed to construct the properties in the main, and also there are a number of commercial developments that are proposed as part of the planning application, which undoubtedly would require people to work there. Would it make a significant difference to employment rates in Soham? As far as I understand, Soham's a very industrious town, and to my knowledge, most people have gainful employment, but I don't have figures to be able to quote you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that is the end of questions to Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question, picking up on what Councillor Horgan's just said. And it's one of the concerns I will be asking officers later. And as we were on the minibus this morning going through Brewhouse Lane, what is congestion like at the moment going to Wetherall Primary School in the mornings? The reason I ask that is that I've got, obviously, we've got 540 houses going on here, especially from the top end. With the best will in the world, people are not going to walk there or cycle, they're going to go by car. So I'm just trying to gauge what the current congestion is. And it may be a very unfair question of you.
Thank you. Our constraint, our clerk constrained some of my own personal comments on it, on this one. Obviously, I gave a sort of part of my speech would have perhaps been the fact that 540 houses, as I said, a 3% increase if we took the transport survey one would, on one car per household would be 15 cars, on 2 cars would be 30 cars. And I know from 20 years ago when I took my son to school, there was always quite a queue outside the Wetheralls or St Andrews dropping these off, and I can't imagine 500 houses would only result in 30 cars coming into town dropping their children off. So I can imagine there would be quite a considerable influx of traffic dropping their children off without any other reasons for going into the town centre. So yes, I would imagine there'd be quite a lot around the school times and the rush hour traffic.
If I can come back, it didn't really answer the question. The question was what is it like at the moment? Forget the 540.
Yes, down the town centre, there would be considerable congestion at peak times, at dropping off school time. Again, there's a school crossing which creates congestion to some degree with traffic. But I mean, if you go into the side roads, and I know it again, taking it a bit wider, it's where you can consider the congestion to be. Down Kent's, back of Kent's Lane, East Fen, the council housing estate down, they will double park in order to pick the children up and use the cut throughs in order to do it. So there's quite a lot of cars about, yes.
Councillor Huffer.
Just to follow up to Councillor Sharp's question, wouldn't most of these schools be heading towards the Shade, which is the new primary school, rather than going to the Wetheralls? I would assume the Wetheralls is probably full, whereas I understand the Shade still has capacity.
Recently, the school at Wetheralls has reduced its intake because they've had insufficient applicants. And as a local town councillor, we were consulted by the school quite recently on that subject to see whether we had any comments about reducing that intake, is my understanding. And I understand they would have capacity, and I believe that the Education Authority have provided an assessment whether or not there is sufficient capacity to meet the requirements from the number of children they anticipate from 540 homes.
So what my understanding on that then is that potentially, if you don't get the numbers up in the Weatheralls, that school could be under threat.
No, that's not my understanding. The school. Oh, apologise. I thought you'd finished asking. Sorry. My understanding is that no, the school is not under threat. It's just the entry year for the moment that has been reduced. And again, it's cutting the cloth, I think, according to the size.
I think that's the end of questions to this group of speakers. So thank you very much indeed. And Councillor Vellicott. That means you can go back into the public gallery.
This is very intimidating. There's so many of you.
Well, you can be his guest
Yeah.
then if you wish.
Colleagues, good afternoon. It's pointless me repeating that before you today are two of the most significant planning applications that the county has seen this decade. I intend obviously to speak separately on both items. Mark has some remaining time as well. I want to thank, first of all, both developers and some objectors for taking the time to meet with me recently to discuss their views. Very wide range of views have been expressed on the application for housing. The discussion on this application began in 2010, when I feel it's probably relevant to remind the committee that I was 5 years of age. But in my service of the Salem South Ward, it falls to me to pass on the views of my residents and my own judgment as councillor. And it also serves to remind members just how important this decision is for our town today. The key point, of course, is that housing on this scale is not strictly necessary for the town. But there are various considerations to be made. This is not, by the nature of this meeting, an ordinary planning application. My residents feel there ought to be more clarity as to how the proposal will link into the access road to the medical centre, which will avoid overloading our roads. The indecision on this matter has been notable, and as you'll see from the Section 106 obligations, we expect to see this resolved by another planning application. Members should note the vehicular access now proposed through both applications and consider it as they would any other application. Access to the medical centre from outside of Soham will, of course, be achieved through the new road from the A142 rather than Brewhouse Lane, and I hope that aids your considerations on traffic. Care, in my view, must also be taken by members to ensure that the conditions allow for sufficient ecological protection of the commons, especially in line with concerns expressed by my colleagues at Soham Town Council. The commons are, of course, what makes our town special. We must have assurance of their protection. The proposal does not touch common land, and it does propose a £125 per household contribution and a high biodiversity net gain. The developer proposes, as part of this application, well over £10 million worth of Section 106 infrastructure improvements for the town. This would include 108 affordable homes, like we've discussed, which would help young people in the area. That 20% figure is in line with the 2019 assessment, which this committee has used for other developments in Soham, such as the one at Brook Street last year. It will deliver school contributions. It will spend £125 for the green space on Quay Fen and East Fen Commons, and help to improve the safety of the junctions on the A142. But most importantly, it would require land to be offered to the National Health Service to allow a new medical centre to be constructed. If members accept this application in its Section 106, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that will be popular, but it will be far more preferable to us falling short of our housing land target. Some of you will remember this long before my time. That would void our local plan. It would ensure that lower quality houses are imposed on us instead without any benefit to the town. And with the new government, I'm trying not to get political, but proposing unattainable housing targets, we're ever more likely to get the wrong kinds of housing without infrastructure. And I will not accept that for some. This application is existential, as I've mentioned, for the long overdue improvements to our medical centre. It's the only viable site on which the NHS can give business case approval, and indeed have already given business case approval in principle for. Only through its expansion can we avoid service reductions there. And members must understand that only circumstance separates these applications. They are existentially interlinked. I will speak separately on the medical centre later, but it does serve to say, I think the whole town of Soham stands in unequivocal support of their proposal, as do even the fiercest critics of the housing application. So we're not all satisfied with the scale of housing proposed, but Soham is pragmatic and understands that without some housing, we cannot expect infrastructure improvements, which the town badly needs. So despite the justified emotion today from all sides, members must make a holistic judgment. Given the unusually high importance of the Section 106 application, the balance must be struck very delicately. I would remind members of my desire that the discussion this afternoon is led by all the people of Soham, including but not just limited to the people in this room, and consider only material planning considerations, please. So please make your judgment carefully, and you have our assurance that my colleagues and I will continue to work in the best interests of the town in accordance with that decision today.
Thank you very much, councillor. Members, questions? I've got one, councillor. One of my colleagues here suggested that we should have considered, or the applicant should have considered, Chippenham as a location for a GP surgery. In your opinion, would that have ended up with more traffic on the roads had that been successful, as the people of Soham drove to Chippenham to their medical needs?
Absolutely, Chairman. The key for the location of a medical centre, there's two considerations here. The first is, what will the National Health Service give business case approval to? The NHS, as we all know, are heavily resource constrained, and it's not as if Stapleigh Medical will not have looked further afield for this. I wish I could give you a list of all the locations that were considered. I can't even remember them all, but this is the only one which has had approval in principle for the business case. There's no point having a huge medical centre like this one with the latest technology at its heart and a huge increase in capacity if it's not in the centre of the district in which it serves. So this is the only viable location, and like it or not, it is existentially interlinked.
Thank you. Councillor Trout. It's a question to Councillor Vellacott.
It is actually, but it's also sort of trying to defend what I thought you the boundarized for my question. The question wasn't about my question about the medical health centre was not that it would be replaced somewhere else. Is that if the inhabitants of Fordham, Chippenham, Isleham, whoever come to state this particular medical centre had a separate facility, would this actually reduce the traffic here? Because they would not be coming all the way from Chippenham, Fordham, Isleham, wherever, all points west. They would be going to a different centre, and this one would be sufficient for them. That's what I was trying to get the hang of.
I have two things to say in response to this. The first is, I reiterate my point from earlier. This is a service which serves Soham and the surrounding area. And most of the people who you're talking about, who are evidently your concern, who are living outside of Soham, are not going to come into the town via one of the straight junctions and come all the way up Brewhouse Lane to access the medical centre. They're going to go over the roundabout on the A142. So that is not going to increase traffic on the Brewhouse Lane. The second thing is, we're speculating about an application which doesn't exist. This is what I mean about material planning considerations. We can sit here and go, what if? But at the end of the day, firstly, this is the application before you. Secondly, we have reiterated, and Louisa has reiterated, it is the only possible application that can come before you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Vellacott. I think as a concession, brief, you are down to speak very, very shortly, but nevertheless, please go ahead.
Thanks, Councillor Hunt. I just wanted to reiterate what Lucius has said there. It's speculative to consider other locations, but moreover, just to clarify, considering branch sites is always part of the options appraisal that is conducted, but the only viable solution for the NHS, including value for money for the NHS, is this proposal on the table here today. Branch sites are great for accessibility in rural locations. Nobody disputes that, but the challenge is the cost inefficiencies that come with building new separate buildings, the capital cost, and then also the ongoing running costs and the staffing costs of multiple locations. And unfortunately, the NHS is just not in a position to approve that kind of model at the moment. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, I think we've finished with the Soham councillors. I was about to move on to the county councillor before, and I think I should be allowed to be the chairman here. So if you gentlemen and would return to the gallery, and then Councillor Goldsack. Councillor Goldsack, you've got 10 minutes.
I won't need 10 minutes, Chair, but thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Committee, just to repeat what has been said a little bit, today you are looking at the outline application for 540 houses, road changes, plus the application for the health centre, fit for now and for the future. I'd like to review some of the history that's led us to where we are today. My first recollection of the comment of, or the phrasing of Eastern Gateway was when I read the 2010 Soham Master Plan, produced then or before then by local members of East Cambs, Soham Town Council and others. Since then, there has been many and constant development of the scope and design until you have what you have before you today in outline form. What we have today is what appears to be an unpopular application for 540 houses. Your planning officers have recommended approval of both applications. We are told that Soham doesn't need houses, doesn't have the infrastructure, that this will do long-term harm to our commons. There are, in the 2015 local plan on which this is sat as a development site of potential, along with many others, indeed there are over 1,000 new housing building projects for Soham on its own, can the town cope? Primary schools, and this is a question that was raised in a previous area. The Shade is built for 2 form entry and is operating at single form entry. Wetheralls was a 3 form entry school. It is reduced to a 2 form entry school, but maintains the infrastructure for a 3 form entry school. I would freely admit, and you were asking for opinions, Chair, earlier, if I were to give my opinions, for about half an hour to 40 minutes at school drop-off and school pick-off time along Pratt Street and the Wetheralls, it is extremely busy. That's just an opinion of the local area. In Soham, sorry, I would need to add also to those schools being having the ability to grow, staffing notwithstanding. I don't know where they're at on staffing these days, other than I could declare that my daughter works at the Shade School. We have a new train station and a bus service under Stevenson's that is vastly improved from the previous operator. Of course, a health centre designed for 13,000 patients and serving well over 20,000, I think we heard 24,000 was the figure, that can't last. But accept this proposal and the delivery ability for healthcare will rise considerably, not just on doctor appointments, but aftercare and follow-up work. My father's a dementia sufferer and we have to transport across Cambridge for regular follow-up meetings for various complaints, Addenbrooke, Sawston and other places. Most of those will be delivered out of the Soham Health Centre. Highways is an issue, but on these applications, there are no further objections. I think there are some issues still to ask. I am a Soham man that now emigrated and lives in Isleham. And when I come to the doctors for any reason, at the moment, I cross East Fen Road or I come in at Newmarket End and I come through the town of Soham and then up Brewhouse Lane, just as described. I won't do that if and when this is built, because I would go along the A142 and in the bypass, therefore lessening a car journey through Soham's built form area. I think that's how most of the people in Fordham, Isleham and the other areas that use Soham Health Centre would grow. I grew up in Salem in the 60s and 70s when everyone knew each other. And literally it took 2 hours to walk the high street on a Saturday morning because of the conversations you had with everybody. Those days have changed and not for the better. The standard statement one hears is we don't need more houses in Salem. However, that isn't true. Okay, they won't all be occupied by what's known locally as Salem people, but by new Salem residents. These Salem residents will bring vibrancy and economy boost to the local shops and services. From Martin's Close, Gunton's Close and the Causeway, I've heard the argument before. We don't need these houses. They are now fully occupied, have been for many years, and have become Salem people. I'm afraid the need for housing is huge, and with over 100 affordable, maybe local first-time buyers can get on the ladder. My daughter that I told you works at the Shade has recently moved to Red Lodge because there was no affordable house that she could buy in Salem at the time. We have heard talk that this has included building on the common land, destroying common land and more. This development dissects the two commons of Quay Fen and East Fen. And whilst there's some impact, I admit, and impact is at best avoided, changes will occur. It provides open space and I think consideration for wildlife. And this style of development is much better than going down a random route and finish up with no consideration. There are animal gateways, there are buffer zones, there are plenty of green open spaces on this. Yes, it'd be better if there was none, there would be zero impact on the commons. However, this is the best consideration I think we're going to get. So in summary, and I've thought very long and hard about this for many years, I think the officers have this correct and they recommend it for approval. New house building always creates emotions and changes the feel of a place forever. But I believe that the outline plans show consideration for wildlife, the commons, and looks to create a transformational residential area for inhabitants. And the huge plus is that Salem and surrounding area will have a health provision that is somewhat future-proofed and enhanced on definitely that which we currently is provided. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsack. Members. Councillor Whelan.
Mentioning primary schools being lacking at the moment with pupils. Children grow up. Provision of senior schools in the area. That's going to be a problem going forward.
I don't know the position. I'm not going to get estimate. I don't know the position on. I know it's not full, but I don't know the position in terms of numbers for Salem Village College, which is the default secondary school for local residents. But Salem Village College coped when the Weatheralls was running at 3 form entry, and the Shade has had a burst year to get through a little bit. Now that they're not there, I would assume that they could cope again. I don't know. That's something that needs to be researched.
A follow-up question, obviously, I think I've lost my train of thought now, sorry. The provision, you know, I'm going back about schools again and the fact that a lot of people coming into the area with the house prices as they are. I know it's horrendous in Ely. It is, I assume, going up in Soham as well, the house prices. Are we going to see people with small children coming into the area? Or are we sort of thinking that maybe it will be, as in some of the new developments in Ely, where there's a lot of teenagers actually moving into the area? I'm just concerned with the affordability of housing on that land and encouraging people with younger children in.
If I can answer that personally, because that's all I can do with an opinion, I think there's a migration of residency, and I think this is emanating out of City of Cambridge, where we're seeing great growth and great commercial growth. And I think people are cashing in and moving to slightly lower priced areas, such as Soham, Ely, Littleport, etc., in the East Cambs area. So there's no doubt there is a migratory effect of residents coming in. I can't comment on ages of children that are likely to come with them. I really can't. What I do know is that the county council has an algorithm that it uses on likely number of children of likely ages in a percentile that's coming through. So from 540, and would have been looking at the local plan and the other sites, and that's how they gauge on the right sites. What I'd say to you, or I'll just reiterate on the education front, I slightly disagree with a comment that was made earlier. I think the proximity of the weatheralls and the fact that a lot of the walkways and passageways, including the incredibly named Stinky Ditch, will benefit from this and will encourage much more walking and cycling to and from school. However, and we see it all the while, a busy parent who's a working parent who wants to drop their child off and then scoot off to Cambridge or Ely or wherever it is they work is likely to do that in vehicle form. So they have to take consideration to that.
Chair, if I may compliment. Chair, sorry, if I may just add to that.
I was just about to move on to comments from the officers, which are on the schedule, and you are next.
Thank you very much. There'll be primary education and secondary education contributions if the development is approved in a proportionate amount to the dwellings that would be approved at reserve matter stage. There'll be contributions also for early years or a provision of a nursery on the site, as well as to libraries facilities as also. If the 540 dwellings were approved in the future at reserve matters, we would have a total of 3,500,000 towards primary education and around £3 million towards secondary education. Obviously, that depends on the number of dwellings once again. I just would like to reiterate, and I won't be long, what has been mentioned, that the site is not within commons land and is not within any designated green space. On the contrary, the site is allocated for housing for up to 600 dwellings overall. And for these reasons, the principle could not be refused on that basis. We can't have 0 houses, as to say. Thank you.
At this point, Manager of Planning, is there anything you would like to introduce at this point from under comments from officers, or would you like to use some of the expertise you have with you?
I'll wait till we have questions before we move to any of the specialists. With regards to one of the things that was raised right at the start of the meeting about a planning application in Haddenham, just for members' clarification, this was an application which was refused for circa 70 odd houses in the village of Haddenham. The prime reason for refusal was because it was outside of the development confines. Therefore, it's very significantly materially different in planning terms to the application you have in front of you today, which obviously is an allocated site, which holds great weight in planning terms. Thank you.
Have we any questions from members to officers? Well, there you go, Councillor Huffer.
I have several and various that I think will probably be fielded out to a wonderful array of experts who are sitting across there. So can I start from the top of my questions? How many questions am I allowed, Chair? 1 or 2? Oh, okay. So this is a question for you. How far is the development from the current houses on Brewhouse Lane? Approximately, I don't expect to the inch.
The development adjoins the medical centre and Brewhouse Lane. Let me just show you.
So the houses that are currently on Brewhouse Lane and the medical centre, how far is it from there to where the development would start that we're currently looking at?
These are the houses adjacent to the site,
right,
the rear of the site. And this is the medical centre.
Right.
Brewhouse Lane starts here.
Here, right, okay, then I've got
So
the
it's
wrong.
less, so we were talking, this is 600 metres or a bit less than half.
Right, okay, I think I've got my roads wrong.
Half mile.
Yeah, okay, I've got my roads wrong in that case then. And the question I was going to ask is how far are the houses from the proposed to be, as I understand this is an outline, and that was 68 metres. Can I ask through you or through the chair, the flooding, that we've been told there's going to be mitigation. I'd like to hear from the leading flood authority how they intend to mitigate the flooding? Because this seems to be an historic flooded area that floods on a regular basis. I need to understand how you would mitigate that flooding. Thank you, Chair.
Hi, yeah, I'm Harry Pitford, Principal Drainage Officer at Cambridge County Council. So the applicants provided a drainage strategy that sets out not only the risk of surface water flooding to the site, but also how they're going to mitigate the development area. From a surface water perspective, there are
Councillor Sharp, can you turn your microphone off?
Yeah, from an existing surface water flood risk perspective, there are small areas of ponding on the site, which the development itself will likely mitigate through the development and the surface water drainage that will be implemented within the development area. In terms of managing the surface water from those new impermeable areas, the proposals are to capture it within the plots, with the details will come forward with the reserve matters. But we've got the infrastructure, which is provided through the attenuation basins and swales to hold the water on the site, and then discharge at a restricted rate into the adjacent watercourses. The rate of which is agreed with the internal drainage board in the area. And that'll be at 1.1 litres per second per hectare, which is about half of the natural green field runoff rate. So it's, from that perspective, a reduction in those peak rates that are leaving the site.
Thank you. So you are confident that there would be no flooding affecting these houses? Because I'm told that this is a very, or certainly the field that we walk through to see the site is notoriously boggy, I think were the words that were used through the winter. And so, you know, we need to understand, if we're going to grant planning permission for this, we need to understand that these properties are not going to be flooded on a regular basis. So I need assurance.
Councillor Huffer, is your mic on?
Yes.
Sorry.
Me.
I think it must be part of a councillor next to you.
I need assurances that this is not going to become an issue for any future residents.
From the information that's been presented to us, that is the case. So the modelling's been provided to demonstrate that the system's got capacity for up to the 100-year storm plus climate change, which is the lifetime of housing. So the information that's been provided to us as the Lee Local Flood Authority, that is, I believe, yes.
Thank you very much. I do have other questions, but I won't be a hog. I'll let other people ask.
You can have one more.
Can I have one more? Okay. Brewhouse Lane. We keep hearing about the traffic down Brewhouse Lane. Can you tell us what mitigation will be put in place to solve this issue of the anxiety and concerns from residents about access or extra traffic accessing Brewhouse Lane?
Through the chair, my name is Jess Tuttle, Transport Assessment Manager, Cambridgeshire County Council. With the Brewhouse Lane situation, we have looked at the walking and cycling down Brewhouse Lane, and we've asked for some improvements to be undertaken with the paths to Brewhouse Lane and also along Brewhouse Lane. There's some missing bits of footway. In terms of traffic, the transport assessment, and I go back to the 3.5%, originally said that 3.5% of traffic would go down Brewhouse. We didn't concur with that view, and we said, well, it's going to be more like 10%. We then had that discussion with the applicants, and to fill in what potentially is a gap that someone has mentioned, we then agreed it was going to be 10%. So then we went and looked at Brewhouse Lane on the basis that 10% of traffic would go down there. We had a look at the junction with Brewhouse Lane with Puddocks Road, is it? I haven't got my map up. Puddock Street, that's it, sorry. And we looked at what we might do at that junction. We studied to see whether there's any accidents at that junction. There aren't. We went on our accident website and some other accident websites. There's nothing there that would suggest there's an accident problem, but we did look at the way pedestrians might move around that area and decided that a drop crossing would be worthwhile to get pedestrians across the Puddock Street, as well as, you know, all the paths and stuff going down to Brewhouse. So in terms of the actual traffic capacity, there's about think it's 20 to 25 vehicles going in and out of that road in the morning. That's 10% of the overall traffic coming in and out. That, in terms of transport assessment guidelines, the government's and ours, is not something that we could raise an objection to, because it doesn't hit the trigger for any kind of junction modelling or large junction interventions. I would also say that when we looked at the junction, we were slightly nonplussed as what we could do there, even if there was an issue. So it was useful that the traffic actually was, I say, relatively low, rather than 50 or 60 vehicles.
Chair, can I clarify? The dropped crossing, do you mean a pedestrian crossing or a light controlled crossing, or just a pedestrian crossing?
This will be a pedestrian crossing to get people across, because we noticed there weren't any at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Lay.
Yes, my question's to David, really. David, I'm concerned that we are only going to have 20% affordable housing on this scheme. And I would like the answer to the question, when have we as a council decided that we will allow a reduction from 30% back down to 20%?
Thank you, Councillor Lay. It is allowed within the local plan for us to allow for 20% affordable housing. What we need to remember is when we're dealing with development sites, there is a pot. So there is a pot for the infrastructure improvements, the education and everything like that. And we are expected to assess applications against viability. What we have done, and you'll see within the officers' report, is as officers, we have challenged back on the 20%, because the developers, as they said in their presentation earlier, consider it to be a maximum of 20%. As officers, we would like to consider that as a minimum. What we are proposing is a review mechanism as we go through the reserve matter stages, which will be viability assessed as we go through. So if circumstances change, apologies, I'll start that again. So what we have as officers are saying is we're saying that 20% is a minimum. We have proposed through the section 106 a review mechanism, which effectively, when we receive each of the reserve matters applications going forward, they will be viability assessed when they've come in. So if there is more room within that said pot, which I've alluded to previously, we will be seeking to capture that within the affordable housing pot.
So what you're basically saying is we as a council have not laid down a minimum. It's left to you in planning to negotiate the best deal you can possibly do on behalf of social housing.
Local plan is 30%, but within that local plan policy, it allows us through viability and assessment to lower it where appropriate. So in this instance, we've had a viability assessment done. That viability assessment has shown 20% to be the appropriate figure. Officers have considered, when looking at this application in the round with the other benefits which are outlined within the officer's report, that we consider 20% in this instance to be an appropriate figure, but taking into account that where, if circumstances change through the lifetime of the application, we would seek to claw some of that back should the viability situation change. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. One of my questions already sort of been answered in terms of Brewhouse Lane. So I'll go on to, I may come back to that in a minute. But on 5.36, it mentions that the proposed traffic calming system would prohibit bus routing through the site. So really my question is around that, but also linking on to that, we're trying to encourage people to use public transport. From the report on, I think it's 5.59, it's certainly within there anyway, that Soham station is between 1,000 metres at the nearest point and 1,500 metres at the furthest. So if somebody wants to get a train and they haven't got a car, or they don't want to use the car, or they can't walk, they're reliant on taxis rather than buses. So my first question is, why can we not get buses down there?
At the moment, the route is not planned to receive public transport buses, and the way it is designed, the traffic calming measures that have been designed in would not allow for it to be used as a bus route. But minor changes to that design can be made through Section 278 agreement that the developers will have to enter into with the local highways authority. That will depend on whether the road will be adopted as well, and that can change. I'm not sure if the local authority would, Chair, if the local authority could add a few more technical details.
My name is Shane Luck. I'm the Highway Development Manager for Cambridgeshire County Council. So in terms of your question of bus routing, the infrastructure as currently proposed, noting that this is an outline application, so we're really only talking about access and general parameters, but the infrastructure has not been designed to accommodate bus routing. That is by product of the traffic calming within the site, which is prohibitive of bus routing, and also the lack of turning or onward connectivity for that bus route. That can be designed out, but it goes into the question of what is the strategy for the site, and the transport assessment did not require buses to serve internally within the site.
If I can come back on that, I mean, two things to that. One is the mayor is currently, we're looking at a bus strategy. So the that work's ongoing. Also, there's potential of a demand responsive transport, which admittedly won't be a full size bus, but it will certainly be a smaller one on the within East Cam. So I'm slightly, I know we're dealing with an outline application, but I would have thought encouraging use of public transport, if we can provide it, would be good. But I hear what you're saying. Coming back then to, and I know the applicant mentioned in their submission, and £337,000 on safety improvements, because we've got 3 crossroads. If we look at the Soham bypass, we've got 3 crossroads on the A142. We've got the shade roundabout. Then within the paper, it mentions the Soham South roundabout, the Ness Road roundabout being above capacity. And also, if we go on out of county, if you want to get stuck in the traffic jam down to the A142 every day. So we've got 500 houses. I wonder what work of Highways done in terms of assessing what transport traffic impact that will have on those roads.
Jez Tuttle again, and through the chair. Transport assessment was carried out with modelling of the junctions to the north and south of Soham as well. The 2 roundabouts, one large and one smaller one to the north. The money that we've collected is going towards capacity improvements at those roundabouts, because we've collected money previously for those as well. So in the future, if CCC comes up with a scheme, which it may well do, then we can pool all the money and we can do some comprehensive improvements in capacity terms. It's not intended that they are safety, the money goes towards safety measures at the moment, but it's certainly capacity improvements at those roundabouts.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Jim. First of all, I'd like to say how pleased I am that we've actually got highways officers here to answer questions about highways, because we often find that I've got planning application, highways becomes the most tricky bit of the application, and we haven't got anybody to ask questions of. So absolutely delighted that you're here. And secondly, as a question is the fact that we've got a roundabout on this road means that it may well encourage people not to drive through the centre of Soham, because Soham's got all these bumps and traffic congestion methods deliberately try to stop people driving through the centre. So do you envisage a large increase in the amount of traffic driving through this development simply because there's a roundabout on the A142?
This is probably a two-part question that could be dealt with by either of us, but I'll do both. So for a start, the aforementioned traffic management measures on the site and the roads themselves are designed to discourage people deciding to go from the 142 through the site to Soham. So that's the first thing. Interestingly, me and my colleague carried out a big sort of not a study exactly, but a look at what times on Google Maps, going round versus going through, and we made some estimates at the speed vehicles would go, and we did actually come to the conclusion that majority of vehicles won't be going through the development into Soham. They'll be coming round via the two roundabouts, and that's one of the reasons why we had to ask for money to mitigate the impact on those roundabouts, simply because the traffic was actually going to use the bypass and come round either the north and the south and go into Soham that way. So 10% of the traffic from the development might go through Brewhouse Lane, but we're not predicting anyone coming in from outside through there, because with all the residential streets and everything else that's going on, and even the school, it would just make it untenable and people would start to use other routes even if they tried it for a couple of days.
If I could.
Councillor.
If I could.
No.
And as part of future reserve matters application, we'll get more detail about those internal highway arrangements. As you can see on the parameter plans, the internal road, the boulevards, were purposely designed to be indirect, and it will be traffic cams such that the design speed is no more than 20 miles an hour. So while access through the development is possible, it is not attractive.
Councillor Trapp.
Thank you. You'll be pleased to know that some of my questions have already been answered. I have a question about the roundabout, because it seems to me that the size and design of the roundabout affects how much traffic could join or not join. For instance, is that roundabout, the proposed roundabout, was about the same size as the ones at the bottom and top end of the thing, of the bypass? I notice also it's when going north, one has to really slow down. When going south, one has a little bit more, could have a little bit more speed, shall we say. So, I mean, that's an important consideration. The larger the roundabout, actually, the more access it is possible to have from side roads. So what size are we talking about?
Forgive me, I don't have a number on the top of my head for the size of that roundabout, but you are right. There's a direct relationship between the diameter of a roundabout and its capacity and ability to accommodate traffic. The roundabout to the south is larger, but that's byproduct of it's taking more traffic. So it's a juncture of 5 roads rather than 3 in this case. That I think it's perhaps roughly the size of the roundabout at the Shade, maybe marginally smaller, but I would have to double check the exact numbers. However, what I can say is that the size of this roundabout, it has been designed to accommodate for the full allocation of the development site. Plus, it also been safeguarded and designed terms to accommodate a future arm to the northeast, should that ever be required. It has also been designed in accordance with all the latest design standards and safety auditors as well.
Yeah, it's a question of whether one can get access to it. If one's breaking the traffic in the major traffic route, is whether one can actually access it, particularly if very little is going into that side road. Thank you. The other question
Councillor Trapp, you did tempt me by saying you'd already
No, I said some of my questions.
Well, please
There's
ask one.
There's a one too many system and some of my question. The new government is looking at genuine affordable housing, and I'm not sure whether at this stage we ought to be saying something about what it means to be affordable, and self-build. I really have real concerns about self-build plots, actually, because they are actually, in my mind, when I've looked at them, much more expensive than the actual thing. So have we got any control? I'm asking this of the planning department, our planning officers. Have we got any control about the affordability and the self-build plots value?
Not on the self-build plots value. The provision of self-build plots is a policy requirement, policy HOU 1 of the local plan. Reason why it's been provided on the site.
Right, but if the value of the self-build plots is such that it's actually, it seems ludicrous to actually build it, it's just too expensive. And then one says, oh, look, no one's buying these plots. We've got a real problem.
There's usually a provision on the section 106 or several provisions regarding self-built plots, and they will have a time limit to be occupied. Otherwise, they could be sold in the open market. This is one consideration we can take.
But is that something which will be at the reserved matter stage or at this stage?
The provisions need to be agreed now at this stage. If there is a resolution to grant today, we will go on discussing the section 106 agreement, and the provisions for the self-built plots would be on the agreement. So it would be now, yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
One other question. Neighbourhood
Councillor, please, there must be a limit to this.
Can we not ask the things about the design? I was looking at the neighbourhood centre. I think I thought it about sort of 40 meters by, I can't remember what the actual size of it was, but it seemed to be for a large development like this, quite small actually, in terms of having a sort of hall or whatever it is. I thought it was 1,600 square meters.
It's up to 1,600 square meters. And again, this is a maximum.
Up to
of floor.
So it's not a minimum.
It's not a minimum.
So it could be 200 square meters.
It could be 200 square meters. And the uses, the specific uses, and the amount as well will have to be tested when those reserve matters come forward for the mixed use.
Right. So that'd be
the reason for that, I'm sorry, is just that it doesn't compete with the Solomon Town Centre.
Right. Okay. So, but that would be a reserve matter stage. Thank you very much.
Councillors, we've now moved on to the.
Chair, can I be really test your patience? I have 3 more questions. Nobody else has asked them, and I think it's really important. I don't know who they relate to. I'd like to ask about mitigation from pets. I'd like to ask Anglian Water what assurances we have, because I know they state in their first comments they were unable to support the application and now suddenly they found capacity. And I would like to ask, we saw the field today in what can only be described as an unused, unkempt state. Was this previously agricultural land that was farmed? They're my 3 questions.
In reverse order, yes, it was agricultural land that was farmed. But obviously that ceased in anticipation of obviously it being allocated sites. With regards to pets, I'm going to pass you over to Amy Robinson, our ecologist.
It is one of the concerns that I have raised that we've got protected species on site and pet mitigation has not been provided at this stage. And I had recommended that it was put into the section 106 with a strong recommendation that they look into the number of houses, whether pet mitigation was viable for protected species on site.
I just don't know what pet mitigation is like telling my cat no. I mean, I might as well, we've told her no lots of times and it doesn't make any difference whatsoever.
Absolutely. And there are measures that they can put in place, safe escape routes, so safe zones for the animals. But that has not been fully looked into at this stage. And with the pet mitigation on the commons, it was put forward that there would be, again, the Section 106 contributions for the land management. So for the lord of the manor who owns the commons, contributions would go towards the restoration of those habitats and provisions in, so nitrogen pollutions from dog waste, etc., would be combated, providing people use the bins, but that's a separate legal matter.
Anglian Water, who's that? Who's here from Anglian Water? Oh, we haven't got anybody from Anglian Water. Oh, no. I was going to ask them what assurances they can give that they can cope with this. And I know they have a statutory duty, but yeah, I wanted them here, didn't you?
You've just taken the words right out of my mouth, I'm afraid. When it comes to sewerage provision and water provision, that the Water Act gives them a statutory obligation that once development is put forward, they need to meet it effectively.
I would love them to come to a meeting.
David, if I just may add, there's been a lot of changes, obviously, throughout the 5 years of assessing this application, and they have confirmed that they have capacity at the moment, both for water provision and used water treatment. Thank you.
Thank you, members. As you're probably aware,
I'm not from Anglian Water, but I can give some background as to what the conversations we've had with them. So through the middle of our site, we've got a new pumping station going in. So we'll be putting new infrastructure to alleviate their upstream concerns that they've currently got. So we will solve that capacity issue by installing a new pumping station in our scheme.
I needed to hear because I know we've got problems with the pumping station and so on.
the Constitution says that when people should ask questions and how many they should ask and how long they should ask it for. And sadly, thank you for your help, but it does not include members of the public when they've passed their speaking time, just putting their hands up and speaking. So we must have some organisation. We now move on to the debate section. And so members. If members are desperate, we could have I was going to let some people go home and get this matter finished because we're very nearly finished. And we are now on the debate section of this. So members, we're in the debate, your points of view. Well, I would like to. Councillor Lay.
Yeah, I have a fundamental question. If we have enough houses already planned to cover the needs for the next 5 years, why should we pass today these 540 dwellings?
If you can answer it, manager, then you.
Very simply put, allocated sites are contained within our five-year housing land supply. The 600 as proposed within your local plan, which was seen to be deliverable during the local plan period, will have been put into the 5-year housing land supply, and that is how we have come up with our figure. So in simple terms, it would affect our 5-year land supply because this is one of the sites which has been used within that calculation. Also, as has been said earlier, obviously this site has gone through the allocation process and by this very council. Anyway, I will leave it there because obviously we're at debate stage. Thank you.
That's Councillor Huffer.
Honestly, I'm only a sub, but okay. So I lay awake worrying about this last night. And felt much better having visited the site today. Speaking as somebody who lives in Fordham, whose ward comprises of Chippenham, Isleham, Snarewell and Kennet, who have just had 2,500 acres of farmland taken away from them with 1.1 million solar panels, I know what it's like to be on the wrong end of a decision that you don't like. I've had lots of housing developments in my patch that people didn't want. I have to tell you that if any of those housing developments came forward with the amount of community benefits that this brings, with a medical centre, contributions towards education, contributions towards road safety, contributions to a library, a community centre, more shops, potential employment, it would have made a lot easier the development that Fordham has seen, and Isleham and Kennet have seen inflicted on them without any of those benefits. We would have loved to have a doctor's surgery, even a remote doctor's surgery in Fordham. Anything like that would have been fantastic. We would have welcomed it with open arms. And if it came with more housing, we would have taken it, to be honest with you, because we've already had the housing. We haven't got any of the benefits. I travel up and down the A142 on a regular basis, and my heart pounds every time I come to that hideous death trap of a junction on the A142. Personally, I would like to see the roundabout there, but I can appreciate that the roundabout being slightly further up is already going to be making traffic slow down. Maybe it's not so many people will lose their life on that stretch. I hear the anger. Nobody wants these houses built where they're going to be looking out over them. Tell that to the people living on Milden Hall Road in Fordham, on Soham, and tell it to the residents of Kennet as well, because it's happened to them as well. So I understand the anger, but I remember the dark days of losing our 5-year housing land supply when we had the developments we're now faced with in Fordham and Isleham thrust upon us because we couldn't defend them. They came without any community benefits whatsoever. Nothing, not one cent other than SIL did we get in terms of community benefit. So we have to defend our 5-year housing land supply. Not wanting to be political, if we don't do this today, it will be done to us either by the government or through some land agent who will challenge our 5-year housing land supply, and then we will have disasters all over the district, and we will be powerless to defend them. I don't want to go through that again. I really don't.
Thank you very much for your contribution. And I was going to say something very, very similar. As I read through the agenda, I saw things like 108 affordable homes. I saw something like £125 per house for maintaining the commons and to go towards making those beautiful areas even more attractive. I saw £220,000 being spent on sports facilities in Soham and 3.5 million education grant to primary schools. And I saw £79,000 going towards the library and £1 million to an early learning provision, i.e. a nursery. I saw another 3 million going towards secondary education and community meeting space, and also saw 16 acres of open space being provided. And no one at all, no one speaking today has said for 1 minute that there's going to be building on the commons. When there's going to be a safer link to the A142. And when I consider, of course, we have as an authority a desire to get to 30% of affordable housing. Of course we do. But when we get the package that is put on the table today, and of course, the cherry on the cake is the doctor's surgery. And I consider it an obligation that I have as an elected councillor to try and keep the health and the well-being of the people in this district or in this county at a high level. And I see the opportunity, and I can see when I talk to the officers who are putting these plans together, in total, there's 2 years' work gone into this, 2 years. And I believe we have to be pragmatic. Ideally, we'd like medical centres and hospitals to come flying across the horizon and landing in every green area or any urban area we've got. But this is an opportunity. And I, for one, will be proposing that we accept the officer's recommendation. And I haven't discussed it with anybody, so I haven't got a seconder at the moment. But I believe Councillor Huffer is going to second that. We'll continue with the debate, but I have formally proposed that we adopt the resolution. Members, continue with the debate. Councillor Wilson.
I might beat councillor Huffer to seconding it. This scheme does provide a lot of very useful things, as the chairman's pointed out. But the thing that struck me when I was standing in the field, I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, we've got meters, 20 meters of this land before we actually get to anything. We've got lots of extra things around the ditch, which will provide plenty of space for little animals and reptiles and things to live in, and hedges going to be built for the birds. We've not seen something quite as nice as this for many of our planning meetings. I mean, the idea of a roundabout on that road, well, a friend of mine was killed on that road by simply turning into one of those entrances. It would probably save several lives. There's several lots of benefits to this. I mean, if we had an application for a sizable thing near to where I live on the A10, and that didn't have proper road information around it at all. So this at least has been thought through. So I'm happy to support it.
I can see reasons for it. I can also see reasons against it. And one must take into account what the town council has actually made, the comments it has made. I think there is significant, although I'm sure we've been assured about the flooding, that there could be problems with flooding there, and there have been in other parts of Soham. We've known from other developments. I think what the provision of all those nice little bounties of this so much to this and so much to that is actually distracting from the main thing, that we're not providing enough affordable housing. And that is what is essentially we still need in this place, in this district. There's not enough of it. So that's one thing I am against it. I think it will, I mean, it probably will go through, but I think the only problem is it will create problems. It is purely car design. There's no buses. There are cycle paths through it, I think, or maybe cycle paths through it. 1 mile to walk to the railway station is not bad. It's about 20 minutes, I suppose, if you're fine, but or one can cycle there. But of course, that railway station doesn't sort of goes from Nout to Nout, really. So, well, it goes from Ely to Bury St Edmunds. Ely is, yeah, but okay, all right. It does not, it's every 2 hours anyway. So it's not really, might be called a commuter or, so I think it will be very car dependent. And actually at the schools, the drop-off will be by cars, not by walking. That, I don't know where the Weatheralls is, but I suspect it's somewhere near the Stapler. I don't know so much. I only have a brother who lives there. But I've never gone to school there. Well, he says my son actually has gone to the village college. All right. So I'm not sure about the flooding. I think we're sure that it's not going to flood. What happens if it does flood? What happens to those inhabitants there who are refused further insurance because they're flooded? I'm very concerned about the provision of the affordable housing, even at 20%, whether it will be truly affordable, how it's going to be managed, and also, as I've made several comments about the 5% self-build plots, these generally are too expensive for anyone to actually consider self-building on that. You add the cost of the materials to the value of the plot, you're actually getting more, you're paying more than a conventional house. So I'm still listening to the debate. I'll still see what's happening, but I really find that this is trying to and the reason we've been told why there's only 20% is because we're trying to shoehorn the development into where it actually shouldn't be. I know it's in the local plan, I know it's all that sort of thing, but actually the point here is that we're trying to shoehorn something to something where it doesn't actually fit in with the rest. It's going to be a separate, completely separate thing, which is going to be a carbuncle, a sort of whelk on the A142. So that's part of my statement. I will see what happens.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Members of this committee might remember quite recently where we had a up to 350 houses application in Burwell. If we are minded to approve this outline this afternoon, I really think we desperately need to bring any reserved matters application back to this committee, because thank you, as it happened, I couldn't make that particular meeting, but it was only because this committee looked at the reserved matters and said they're not good enough. The developers went away and vastly improved what then came back to a future committee meeting. So I think if we are minded to approve the outline, I would urge that we bring everything back to reserved matters to committee.
Councillor Lay.
Well, Councillor Brown has taken the words out of my mouth. I think provided reserved matters come back to this committee, I am prepared to vote in favour of this application.
Councillor, I can't answer two things at once, so hold on a second, Councillor. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, as we're hearing the principle of developments established in the local plan, but I've got serious concerns about certain things. And I know it's only outline, but that is where part of my problem is. Because I've seen admittedly much smaller developments in my area and other areas where we get an outline application in, and then the developer, once they've got the outline permissions, totally change the goalpost. So I'm only a sub on this committee, so I probably won't be here for the main. If it is approved, then I agree that it should come back to this committee, the reserved matters. But I've still got big traffic concerns, and I bow to experts over there from the county council. But as a layman, I've still got issues with the A142 and the extra traffic, and we've heard from two councillors actually who've said, well, rather than going through Soham, if this is passed, if they're going to the medical centre, they'll go along the A142, round the new roundabout, and then in through this main road through the development, which there brings another issue, because if we're going to get more traffic from the A142 going through the development, I know we got 20 mile an hour and there's I don't know the detail. I don't think it's in the, if it is, I've missed it. Road traffic calming, but obviously there's going to be more traffic maybe than envisaged, and it may be in your modelling. And you know, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I have got concerns about lack of buses going through there, and it does go to taking Councillor Trapp's point. It does go to a wonderful railway station that hopefully we can get connected south, but it will then go through Newmarket and direct to Cambridge, but that's another issue. So yes, so the railway station is a big thing. I'm not expecting a developer to pay for all of the A142 work, and I think you said we're getting 337,000 and we've got monies from other developments. But I mean, I'm represent villages south of Newmarket, and I drive to Ely along the A142, and I know the A14 junction, and that is getting worse. So it's something, the more traffic we get using that road is going to cause issues. Hopefully we can do this, but the money that's been promised on Section 106 monies for education does go, if it's passed, does go to Soham Village College and Wetherall and the Shade, rather than just going into a central county council pot. But that should go to those children's. And I see the benefit of the medical centre, but I've still got, like Councillor Trapp, I will listen to the debate. I've still got concerns. Thank you.
Members, any more? Okay. First of all, I would like it to be minuted that there were concerns about the lack of a bus service through the site, and that should be in my view, reconsidered and looked into again, because I think it's very much a necessity of our new life to have buses. And in terms of my proposal to accept the officer's recommendation, having thought about it, I would be suggesting altering that proposal to the reserve matters coming back to this committee to review it when the time was right. I have seen a hand to the left, Councillor Trapp.
It's to do with, sorry. It's to do with the question I asked about self-built plots, and apparently I was told that this has to be determined at this stage. Is that right?
The percentage is determined.
Well, it wasn't the percentage I was interested. It was actually the value of them. What
We
they
cannot.
Yeah, we don't have control over that, Councillor Trapp.
Well, in that case.
So I believe we are now at the stage where we'll vote. I had Councillor Huffer second me. Do you agree in that comment about coming back?
100%, Chair, yeah.
Coming
All
back to
reserve matters, I don't care how small they are, to come back to committee.
Okay, so we're now going to vote. Are those in favour of agreeing with the officer's recommendation as proposed by me and seconded by Councillor Huffer, but with the proviso that the reserve matters come back to this committee? Are those in favour, please raise their hand.
7, Chair.
Will those who are against it please raise their hands?
2, Chair.
And are there any abstentions? Okay, so we are now going to have a comfort break and we will resume here at 25 to 5. So it's for those who would like to leave can leave now, and thank you for coming. And those of you who want to stay on for the other matter are more than welcome to stay. Yes, the technical members. I beg your pardon, can we just have hush for just 1 minute, please? technical members, thank you very much for coming. And if you wish to go now, then now's the time. Thank you, everybody. Can we start to take our seats, please? Can we start to take our seats? We now move on to agenda item 5, and we start with the officer presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Can everybody hear me okay? Yep. Right, agenda item 5 relates to the development of a new healthcare facility in Soham and the demolition of the existing facility. Just as an advisory to members, my officer report, which was published ahead of this meeting, covers all relevant matters in full. And the purpose of the presentation is to provide a brief overview of the main considerations and to answer any questions that you may have. So the above image shows the application site as outlined in red, sited to the eastern edge of Soham. And the above aerial image shows the aerial context of the site within the as indicated by the blue arrow. To give members better context, the above aerial image indicates the position of the proposed medical centre site as identified by the blue arrow, and the green arrow indicating the existing medical centre site. So the proposal seeks planning consent for the development of a new health centre facility of 1,895 square metres and a pharmacy of 120 square metres. The associated square footage is listed up on the screen there. Also included within the proposals are the associated car parking, lighting, landscaping, public realm and utilities. The proposal includes the utilisation of the existing access onto Brewhouse Lane and the demolition of the existing health centre. The proposed medical centre building would be rectangular in form with a maximum height of 8.6 metres or 28.2 feet, length of 46.6 metres or 152.8 feet, and a width of 27 metres or 88.5 feet. The above floor plans show the internal positioning of the medical centre facilities. And there are some artist impressions on the screen for members there as well. The site would be laid out with parking to the southeast and northeast of the medical centre sitting centrally within the plot. To the northwest and southwest, there would be landscaped areas which abut residential boundaries. The site would be accessed through the existing medical centre site, with the access utilising the existing access arrangement onto Brewhouse Lane. The proposed plans show that the site would be accessed in the future from the north as part of the wider Soham Eastern Gateway allocation site. There are some site photos just to remind members of the existing medical centre that they saw this morning. And the main considerations of the proposal are the principle of development, design character and density, residential amenity, highways, access and movement, biodiversity and trees, flood risk and drainage, and there's a couple of other matters that I'll come to. So in terms of the principle of development for this particular proposal, there is strong support in terms of both local and national planning policies. The application site is located within the Soham 3 allocation and is therefore considered acceptable in terms of the location or strategy. The proposal would see the replacement of an existing medical centre with a purpose-built and improved medical centre. The need for upgraded medical centre facilities is recognised within both the local plan and the Soham and Barway neighbourhood plan, and the principle of development is therefore acceptable, subject to compliance with all other relevant policies. In terms of residential amenity, the position of the health centre building would be approximately 16 metres or 52 feet to the boundary with the dwellings along Brewhouse Lane. These dwellings are generally set back from the shared boundary by approximately 13 metres or 42 feet. To the southeast of the site, the car park area would be positioned adjacent to the boundary with the residential dwellings along Brewhouse Lane, with a landscaped buffer in between. It's acknowledged that the introduction of the new medical centre on this site will have an effect on residential amenity through changes in the site's use. There will be vehicle movements to and from the site, which will create some noise and disturbance. However, as this is an area of car park, it's expected that these vehicles will be travelling at low speeds, and it's not anticipated that this would create significant levels of noise such that it would warrant refusal on this basis. Furthermore, the existing medical centre, which would be demolished, is already accessed by Brewhouse Lane. Noises created from the users of the car park entering and exiting vehicles will be limited to the medical centre opening times, and the nature of the medical centre itself is not a use that would be considered to create significant levels of noise and disturbance. In summary, while the introduction of the medical centre will see a change in the area and some impacts to amenity, these are not considered so significant such as to warrant refusal of the application on that basis. And it's considered that the proposal may be adequately controlled by way of condition in terms of hours of operation, construction times, construction management, ground piling, noise, external lighting, obscure glazing to prevent overlooking, and balcony screening. In terms of visual amenity, the proposed building is modern in its design and features contemporary materials. Its style and arrangement is not out of keeping with modern healthcare facilities. While the proposed building is large, the maximum height has been kept to an appropriate level. The building serves a functional purpose, and therefore its appearance and scale would not be at odds with similar schemes in the district. The proposal site is located within the allocation site of the SOAM 3 allocation, which specifically sets out that the allocation will provide for expanded medical facilities. The proposal includes significant landscaping to assimilate the development and create an attractive site. So while it's accepted that the introduction of this development would change the character of the area, the site does form part of the wider SOAM 3 allocation within the local plan, and as such has been identified within the locational strategy for growth. In terms of highways, the proposed medical centre would be accessed through the existing medical centre site, utilising an existing access from Brewhouse Lane. It is proposed that this link is temporary until such time as the site can be accessed from within the Surham Eastern Gateway allocation site. The future access land is outside of the red line boundary for the medical centre application you have in front of you today, and as such the detail of any future access would be secured under a reserved matters application as part of the Eastern Gateway site. Bear with me. With this in mind, we consider that it's appropriate to condition that in the event of a secondary access being proposed to the site, that a scheme shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority, which details how the southern access to the site shall be effectively and permanently stopped up and incorporated within the parking for the medical centre. Clarification has been sought from the local highways authority that should the Surham Eastern Gateway site not come forward in the future, that the proposed access from Brewhouse Lane, as shown to members there, would be acceptable in perpetuity. It's been confirmed that the proposed access would be sufficient to accommodate the needs of the proposed medical centre. In terms of car parking, the Policy Com 7 of the local plan requires healthcare facilities to provide 5 parking spaces per consulting room. On plan, the medical centre contains 27 consulting rooms, which would trigger the requirement for 135 spaces under policy. The application proposes to provide 124 car parking spaces. It's been a long afternoon. So while there is a shortfall between the proposed parking and what would be required under the policy, it's recognised that the existing medical centre provides 77 parking spaces at present. So this is actually an increase in the provision from what the existing medical centre is providing. In addition, the applicants advised that the way in which they carry out appointments isn't limited to face-to-face appointments. Patients can be seen face-to-face, or medical queries can be dealt with over the phone, via email, through things like the Ask My GP system, which actually reduces the number of patients that actually need to attend the medical centre in person. So we consider that with that in mind, the proposal in front of us today would be appropriate. In terms of cycle parking, the policies within the local plan would require a total of 54 cycle spaces. However, the applicants confirm that the existing medical centre has a provision for 6 cycle spaces and that these are near zero use by patients at present. The applicant confirms that the provision of 18 spaces as proposed today is in accordance with BREEAM standards, and the local planning authority consider that the proposed cycle parking, while not strictly compliant, does represent an increase to the existing cycle parking arrangement and would be acceptable in this instance. So moving on to ecology, biodiversity and trees. The trees officer has reviewed the proposed planting scheme and notes that some aspects of this will need adjustment in terms of the tree specifications to avoid known issues with tree species. So that's why members will see that I've recommended a soft landscaping condition within my recommendation. The applicant has also submitted a preliminary ecological appraisal, which concludes that the development is considered to be a generally low impact as it affects developed land and arable land of low conservation importance. The report recommends that a biodiversity enhancement strategy is implemented, which includes bird and bat boxes, bee bricks, high binocular and hedgehog holes and boundary treatments, and those can be secured by condition, which we have recommended within the officer report. The same report notes that 2 buildings on the site have been identified as having features with low suitability for roosting bats. The report recommends that these features are each subject to 1 emergent survey using a detector and night vision aids between mid-May and August inclusive, prior to demolition. The report sets out that if roosting bats are found within the site, then a further survey effort may be required at that stage to gather sufficient information to characterise the roost and to inform a protected species licence application. The council's ecologist has reviewed all of this information and requested that those things are secured by condition, which is included within my report. And while the application was submitted prior to the mandatory biodiversity net gain legislation coming into effect, the applicant has submitted information in order to demonstrate that a gain of 21% can be achieved on the site. Just for members' clarity, the mandatory biodiversity net gain increase is 10%, so this is significantly over that. Moving on to flood risk and drainage. The application site is wholly within flood zone 1, where the principle of development is considered acceptable. The proposals have been reviewed by Anglian Water, who confirmed that the foul drainage from this development is in the catchment of the Soham Water Recycling Centre, and that will have available capacity for these flows. They also confirmed that they accept the surface water drainage strategy, which will connect to Anglian Water sewers due to the clay nature of the site preventing infiltration. The lead local flood authority and the internal drainage board have been consulted and they've removed initial objections. With regard to other matters, we consider it appropriate to append a condition to any grant of permission that requires the development will meet BREEAM standards, and environmental health have requested conditions are appended that the development is carried out in accordance with the geo-environmental desk study that's been submitted. So in terms of the planning balance, with regard to the principle of development for this particular proposal, there is strong support in terms of both local and national planning policies. The application site is located within the Soham 3 allocation and is therefore considered acceptable in terms of its location. The proposal would see the replacement of an existing medical centre with a purpose-built facility. The need for upgraded medical centre facilities is recognised both within the local plan and also the Soham and Barway neighbourhood plan. The introduction of the development would change the character of the area, but the site does form part of the wider Soham 3 allocation and it's been identified for growth. It's considered that the scheme submitted is of high quality in terms of its design and landscaping, and as such complies with both local and national planning policies in that regard. In terms of the flood risk and drainage, there are no statutory objections from consultees. The proposals have been reviewed by the local highways authority and the county council transport assessment team, who were satisfied with the proposals. It's acknowledged that there will be a change in the relationship between the site and neighbouring occupiers, and that there may be some impacts on residential amenity through day-to-day operations. However, it's considered that these may be adequately controlled through the use of conditions, and conditions have been recommended for amenity purposes, which include the hours of operation, lighting, noise impacts, obscure glazing and screening, and soft landscaping. The impacts on residential amenity are not considered to be so severe as to warrant refusal of the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and congratulations for talking close to the mic and clearly. I had a few comments from some of the people who've already gone home. If you when you are speaking, will you remember that the people in what we call the public gallery behind us haven't got loudspeakers with them, and you are facing away from them. So if you can, for this particular agenda item, if you can speak closely into the microphones and be aware there's people trying to listen behind. Thank you very much. So we now have our first, well, we have the first lead applicant, Louisa Wood.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon again, councillors. As Mearside Medical, we are grateful for the decision today regarding Thurm Eastern Gateway. And while we recognise the wide range of views on the housing, as has been discussed at length today, it is the case that a new medical centre would not be possible without it having been approved today. Similarly, we are sincerely grateful to the planning team for recommending this application for the medical centre for approval. This is an essential and very long awaited step towards bringing our vision to life, and we are absolutely delighted to be here in the room with you all today. And reflective of that, in attendance we have representation from the whole team. So myself, I'm Louisa Wood, Chief Operating Officer of Mearside Medical, Dr. Richard Brixey, Managing Partner of Mearside Medical, then David Park, who's Assistant Director of Sustainability and Infrastructure at Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Integrated Care Board, aka our Commissioner and decision maker over our business case. And on the end, we have Ashley Seymour, who is Development Director for Assura, who are the specialist NHS building developer that we are working with to bring this scheme forward. And on my left is Richard Seamark, as you all know, who is partner at Carter Jonas and has helped us bring this application forward. So just to summarise, again, it has taken 13 years to get to this point. The Staplow Medical Centre that councillors have visited today was designed to serve about 13,000 patients, and our list size is now almost 24,000 and continues to grow. We serve our patients as best we can, but the building is simply far too small. We are at the stage now where our limited space has a direct impact on the service our patients receive, including the number of face-to-face consultations we can offer. It also has a material and detrimental impact on staff recruitment and retention. In a workforce challenged NHS, this is a really serious consideration for us. It is now time critical that new premises are built and operational as soon as possible in order to keep up with further housing development in Chippenham, Fordham, Isleham, Soham, Wycombe and the surrounding villages that we serve. During the last 13 years, GP partners and I, more recently at Mearside Medical, have explored all options to increase capacity at the current Staplow Medical Centre. And as I mentioned earlier, we're subject to space requirements and regulatory constraints, which demand a large plot of land with room to expand in future in close proximity to the current practice. Crucially, we must also be able to continue to run the service from our existing premises throughout any period of construction. The proposal before you today is for a future-proofed, sustainable healthcare facility that will enable us to serve up to 32,000 patients with space on the plot to further extend the building in future if and when required. The design of the new medical centre represents years of development in close collaboration with the GPs and the staff to provide a state-of-the-art primary care facility, which has been optimised to suit the delivery of modern healthcare whilst dramatically improving the patient experience. In terms of sustainability, the building has been designed to the highest standards with requirements to achieve BREEAM Excellent and aspirations to achieve net zero carbon in operation. The maximum capacity for face-to-face consultations will more than double. The number of staff that can be accommodated will also double, providing suitable facilities for staff to carry out remote consultations or any other aspect of the patient journey. We will be able to reinstate a wide range of community services that we have had to stop offering due to space constraints. There will also be 2 dedicated rooms to support trainee clinicians, be they GP registrars, trainee nurses, or trainee advanced practitioners. As an accredited training organisation, this is hugely important to us, to the student experience, and also to ensuring the long-term sustainability of our clinical workforce. Being able to offer a modern, fit-for-purpose and healthy workspace is a key pillar of successful recruitment and retention. We hope that having state-of-the-art medical premises will further improve our recruitment offering, and Mearside Medical will become an even more attractive prospect for future staff. In this respect, we feel we must raise some concern about the extent of obscured glazing on the first floor, as stipulated in condition 15 and described in point 716 of the officer's report. While this is not a business critical matter per se, it is one that we feel is of material concern for the well-being, recruitment and retention of essential NHS staff. Page 20 of our revised design and access statement provides our proposed mitigations in response to concerns regarding the risk of actual and perceived overlook by properties adjoining the boundary. We feel that these mitigations are reasonable and proportionate to the risk without unduly impacting on our staff. However, we note the officer's concerns and would like to propose an amendment to the condition based on further assessment. This matter notwithstanding, we are beyond excited to be here today discussing this application. We know that our patients want and recognise the need for a new building. In recent surveys, over 90% of patients who responded were supportive of a new building for Staplow Medical Centre. The planning application has broad support from Chippenham, Fordham, Soham and Wycombe Parish Councils, Soham Ward District Councillors, our patient participation group, as it was at the time, the then MP Lucy Fraser and our NHS Commissioner, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Integrated Care Board. We hope that with a positive decision today and continued efforts to keep driving this scheme forward, we might be operational in the new building as soon as early 2027. This opportunity represents a hugely appreciated and anticipated opportunity to us as healthcare providers to provide better service to our patients and an inspiring workplace for our staff. I and the rest of the team are here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for your time.
Right, members, questions to the applicants. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, the fact that you've got a lovely new facility here isn't going to reduce your other facilities that you have in other villages, like Hadnam, for example, is it?
Happily. So I'm Richard Brixham, as Louise said, I'm a partner at Mearside Medical. No, they're completely separate from in terms of operations. We share staff slightly when we need to, but no, we certainly wouldn't be aiming to reduce service anywhere. Everywhere needs more local healthcare. We wouldn't be aiming to reduce anything.
Thank you. Can I follow this up? Have you considered additional facilities, for example, dental facilities at all?
I'm not a dentist, and none of our practitioners are, but I believe part of the wider scheme had provision for potential dentists, but not within this building.
Councillor Trout.
Thank you. what's going to happen to the old site? What will happen there? Will it be landscape? Will it be housing? Will it be what?
I mean, it's fair to say no, no decision's been taken on that at this stage. Once, well, if and when the medical centre gets its approval, it will get relocated into the Eastern Gateway main site. It will free up this site for development. One opportunity would obviously be, for residential development. There's been no fixed decision on that at this stage, but that would be a reasonable assumption, I think.
Can I ask another question? I'm not sure.
The answer is yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Oh God. Well, phew. I'm not speaking out of turn then. I wasn't sure about the plans for it, but it looked to me like the main entrance is towards the gateway, towards the east. And I was looking at the disabled parking. Is that's sort of down from the main entrance, is it? Along there. Is there any more? How many disabled parking spaces do you have? Is it about 8? So that's the only disabled parking, which probably for that size medical facility might need a bit more. Is there separate staff parking or not?
So the entire car parking allocation is for staff and patients. There are 7 disabled bays there, which is in line with planning kind of requirements typically.
But on the north, is it all patient and staff?
So I think behaviourally, we will work out how the staff use which spaces, but I think as a general rule, we will make sure that the spaces closest to the front door will be left for patients, and that's where the disabled parking spaces currently are. So the top ones are directly in front of the front entrance, and then the ones kind of beneath that just run along the front of the building.
Right, thank you very much.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Just for my benefit as much as anything else, you mentioned that staff numbers you're expecting to about double. Could you just give me a feeling of how many you currently employ?
So across Mearside Medical, which is 3 practices, Haddenham Surgery, Staplow Medical Centre and Cathedral Medical Centre, we plus, it's difficult to give you an exact number because we also employ PCN staff who are working across a broader number of sites. But in total, on our payroll, we have 163.
Thank you.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, it looks really good. And I know I've been going on about this in the previous thing. Looking at the map there and looking at the highways comment about that they were talking about trying to stop rat running from Brewhouse Lane through as I see it, through the car park into the approved site. Oh, that's a better map. Yeah. Is it my understanding that the bit on the dotted lines on the right-hand side of where the road's finally going to be once the new development is sorted? Is that?
If you don't mind, Councillor Sharp. So as the officer outlined, first of all, if a second entrance, which you'll see shown within the Eastern Gateway, comes forward, the idea is that we would then stop up the access which we are proposing at the moment, which is being highlighted there. So at the moment, what you have is, for this application, for this moment in time, the proposed access is as shown on there. You'll note to the right of that proposed access, you'll see a sort of sorry, Ella, can you bring it down slightly? You'll see there's a temporary access which circumnavigates the existing doctor's building. That's designed for construction. So obviously when it's built, then they will and demolished, then that access point will come in. And then at some point in the future, bearing in mind that that's quite deep into the Eastern Gateway site and may not come forward for a number of years, what we're doing effectively is we're saying that should that additional access point come in, which obviously would be more logical, utilising the roads within the Eastern Gateway, we would then be seeking to stop up the other access to stop a rat run. And I think the long-term sort of plan is that the access point then would stop going into the site, and then you'll see the dotted lines there. It would then join up with that estate road that runs through the estate.
Thank you for that. It's a very useful explanation. Thank you.
Councillor Trapp.
Sorry, I'm bare of little brain there. Will the dotted line remain there and the access to Brewhouse Lane from the Eastern Gateway be there or in perpetuity? I mean, how are Soham residents going to access the centre?
They will, that dotted line would remain in perpetuity. The idea would be is that they would come in through the access way. Instead of swinging left there, they would go straight on.
Okay, so
then they would swing round to the left and they would use that other access point.
So you're going to block up the entrance in the southeast corner.
Correct.
In the south corner, but there'll still be the access from Brewhouse Lane to.
That's the proposed end sort of goal, if that makes sense.
All right, thank you very much. Sorry.
Any more questions? No. We've got to jump, and we have two town councillors speaking, Alec Jones and Keith Organ. So I think if the applicants can let at least two of the councillors speak, but it may be that they'll come back to questions for you in a minute.
I thought you'd find out for a minute then.
Right. Oh, that's a good mix. Away you go.
Thank you, Chair and Committee, for this opportunity to speak on the matter of this planning application for a new medical centre. We cannot stress the significance of a positive decision here to the future of Soham and the surrounding villages. Councillor Jones and I are speaking on behalf of Soham Town Council in support of the application recently submitted for the proposed new Staplow Medical Centre. Although some members of the council dispute the need for further housing on the scale of the proposed Eastern Gateway, councillors recognise the desperate need for a new medical centre to serve the town and neighbouring villages. The current centre is no longer fit for purpose, having been designed to serve, as we've heard earlier, 13,000 patients rather than the 24,000 now on its list. With this number set to increase as more housing comes forward in Soham and the nearby villages, it is vital that a new modern medical centre is built to keep pace with demand. This application is not only endorsed by Soham Town Council, but records show by residents, ward and district councillors, our county councillor, and even Lucy Fraser when she was our local MP. They've all written in support of this application. They can't all be wrong. In the event that the new medical centre does not materialise, it seems inevitable that the existing facility will have no option other than to close its books to new patients. This would not only harm the ability of Soham to accommodate further expansion, it would also impact every new family and resident that moves to the area. The planning application submitted represents a significant milestone for our community on the journey towards better healthcare facilities for our residents, and the Town Council would like to put on record its support for the proposal and urges the Planning Committee to approve this application. Thank you for your attention in this matter.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Jones, are you wanting to speak?
Sorry, Chair.
Okay, well, members, questions to the town councillors. Well, you've got off lightly. Councillor
Sensible.
Vellicott.
Thank you, colleagues, again. It serves to say that I stand in unconditional support of this application for the New Stapleton Medical Centre. I won't endeavour to repeat some of the points that have been made, but community healthcare is quite literally the heart of our town and it's badly oversubscribed. This will take us from a capacity of 13,000 to 32,000 with room to grow in a beautiful setting, as you will have seen this morning, with the latest technology at its heart. It's going to provide valuable routine medical services to Soham and the surrounding villages. It contravenes no policies in the local plan at all, whether that be environmental or amenity or design, and the biodiversity net gain will improve too. The application's presence before you is, as others have stated, pretty much a miracle. Louisa and her team at the NHS have worked impossibly hard to obtain an outline business case approval for the project and work with local partners to resolve access problems and more. And this is the only meaningful location accepted as viable by the NHS. And it's the culmination of so much effort that the prospect of letting it fall now is inconceivable. Even the fiercest critics of the Eastern Gateway have been unequivocal that this application must succeed. The Medical Centre, of course, will double the capacity of the practice, safeguarding essential routine services and enabling many services to be reinstated at the practice that have only been stopped at the moment due to the lack of space. And staff who cannot currently be accommodated in the current buildings will have access to fit for purpose workspace, which is an essential component of recruitment and retention in both the local NHS and the NHS more widely. This facility will transform healthcare provision to villages all across the area with room to grow with demand. So once this application is approved, the NHS will intend to apply for SIL to East Cambridge District Council and full business case approval to the NHS, after which building can commence. This is imperative now at this point, because with housing must come this infrastructure, not one without the other. And this is why I think today of all days we've now seen that allocated sites really matter. We can either have just houses or houses with proper infrastructure which fit in our communities, and this is what this is. And now that that outline housing application has been approved, I really hope that my residents' concerns will be fully communicated to the developer, of course, ahead of any reserved matters or any building taking place. But given that situation, the medical centre categorically must be approved to compensate the town for the housing that it now faces. We have to move forward positively and collaboratively for the town. Objectives might have left today as soon as they didn't get their way, but I'm going to continue to work hard no matter the situation, no matter the odds, to get what Soham deserves.
Thank you very much. Questions? The Councillor Vellicott. You don't have to look at Councillor Trapp.
You want a question?
Not necessarily.
Fortunately, I've developed tunnel vision, so however, any questions, seriously, members? No? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Vellicott. And we now go on to Councillor Mark Goldsack.
I really will not take very long. There are two parts to my speech. The first one is ditto everything that Councillor Vellicott has just said. I won't repeat it, just ditto. The second part is it would be remiss of me not to take this opportunity to outline what Louisa and Richard and the team of Mearside have done for the residents of Soham and the local villages in an inadequate, out-of-date, undersized building. The fact that they are servicing 24,000 people with their medical needs, albeit if you read Facebook, terribly, but there you go. I think that they've done a marvellous job, and I think to have them at the helm of a suitable new facility such as what you are about to vote on to serve not just Soham, but Soham and the surrounding area. This is a true East Cambs facility serving the middle part of East Cambs, and we should not lose sight of that. And I implore you all to support this application. Thank you.
Anyone got any questions for Councillor Goldsack? Yes, Councillor Lay.
Thank Councillor Goldsack. I just echo what you were just saying about the team there, but I just wondered whether you were aware that for COVID vaccinations, Stapler Medical Centre was covering a much wider area than you're talking about. I live in Burwell. We all came to Stapler for our vaccinations. So well done.
I deliberately didn't bring COVID up because whilst I recognise that fact, I used a more broader sense, and I want to look forward and just think what they can deliver on a prohibitive basis rather than a reactive basis if they've got the right facilities and the right skilled staff and the right equipment. And what I know is that they are bringing that forward if we get this passed today for all the benefit of the middle part of East Cambridgeshire. Thank you.
No more questions, so we now move on to debate, and I would like to echo, beg your pardon, questions for or comments from officers.
I have no further comments to make, Chair, but I'm welcome to questions.
Members, questions for officers.
Yes, I'd like to tackle the subject of the obscure glazing on the first floor. You know, working in an office and not being able to see at all out of the window is not that pleasant. So I'm proposing that, having looked downstairs at the windows down there, which are 50% blanked out by the alternative shading, that might be an answer to what is required to give some view out of the windows upstairs on the first floor. So I welcome your comment on that.
So just to give you some context in terms of my assessment of residential amenity, we need to take into account a number of factors, not just necessarily the view out of the window. So with regard to the operating times of the facility, we are conditioning opening hours of between 8 in the morning and 7 p.m. Monday to Friday, 7:30 till 5 all other days, and up to 3 days a week until 10 p.m. in the evening, so that the medical centre can provide additional clinic services. The distance from the rear elevation of the proposed medical centre and the boundary of the neighbouring gardens is 16 metres. So I have had consideration as to the impact on the amenity of those neighbours in terms of their privacy, their perception of overlooking, how they would feel in using their gardens with the medical centre in that position. So that is the reason that I have recommended the wording of condition 15. If members wish to amend the wording of that condition, you may do so. You would just need to advise me of the wording that you wish to be appended to any grant of permission.
So how would you describe what we have downstairs, where we have 50% of the window that is obstructed and 50% of the window which is clear?
If you have a look at the design and access statement, which was proposed by the applicants, they proposed something which was similar to what you're describing, which was striated obscure glazing, which is effectively slightly different size gaps as you go up. As almost like, I would suggest, bearing in mind that's already in the design and access statement, that we just condition the detail to be similar to that.
Thank you.
So what is your suggestion, Councillor Lay, exactly?
Well, my suggestion would be that this is a wonderful project and I would always support it. But I think having the glazing done in the manner that they've suggested is probably the right way to go.
And your suggestion is, I was going to introduce a compromise which was going to have a metre of clear glass from the floor up to sort of this height, a metre, and then the obscure glass up to 5.9 inches, 5'9".
1.8 metres, so it would be 80 centimetres.
1.8
Yeah.
metres. Now, but that would be with obscure glass. What we'd like to do is find some compromise that worked the privacy of the neighbours and also allowed your staff to work in good conditions. So you've got your hand up. Does that mean you wanted to speak? Please do.
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. And, you know, it feels like a side issue almost compared to the magnitude of the scheme. But as I said earlier, we really care deeply about the work environment for our staff and to emphasise that the people who will be occupying that space are the ones that the patients never see. They're the people who do all the hard work behind the scenes, staring at a computer screen all day. And so for them to have the opportunity to either look down into the gardens or to look up to the sky or see a bit of tree foliage to give their eyes a break is so important to their sense of well-being whilst they're at work, as well as, you know, wider happiness and productivity, and that they're in a nice environment. So that's what's driven us to raise this. Just as a point of clarification, 1.8 metres, which is proposed on condition 15, is in fact 5'11". And that's the eye height of somebody who's about 6'3.5". So what we looked at was, where are people's eye heights on average? Because that's what matters actually. And we feel that obscured glazing as conditioned from the floor all the way up to 1.8 metres, i.e. 5'11", would feel quite oppressive. Eye height is on average 10 to 11 centimetres or 4 to 4.5 inches below head height. So as I said, the glazing as conditioned is equivalent to somebody who's about 1.9 metres or 6'3.5", whereas the average head height for British people is 1.7 metres or 5'7", and average eye height is 1.6 metres or 5'3". As a slight aside, our staff are 85% female. So, you know, the average for our staff is lower, but our proposal would be similar to what is in the design and access statement, which hopefully you've all seen. So clear glass up to 0.7 metres or 2.4, then obscured glazing from 0.7 metres to 1.6, which is 5'3", the average eye height, and then striated or swirly pattern or something that's kind of mixed frosted and clear glass from 1.6 metres up to the 1.8, which is what was put forward by the officer. So we've kind of shifted the fully obscured up a bit to match the average eye height, and kept the maximum height as put forward by the planning team, but included a bit of kind of, what did I say, partially obscured glazing in that top kind of 20 centimetres, or how many inches is that? Off the top of my head, eight-ish inches, so that when you're sitting at your desk, you can still see something through that. And lastly, to add, it's not a thoroughfare, so people walking towards the window or walking back towards their desk or walking to speak to somebody, and that room would never be used on the weekend because it's the people who are doing all that cog turning work behind the scenes. So it's quite complicated to explain verbally, but it's basically what we've put here, just adjusted upwards slightly.
Thank you very much. The planning manager and I have had some conversations about this. So would you like to move on what we suggested?
Well, what I was going to say is, if members are minded to move towards the suggestion that Louise is making, I know this slightly complicates matters, Louisa, but I apologise for this because it's going to be difficult to do through the decision notice, because obviously that's not a submitted plan. Is I would suggest that we adjust the condition to say details of obscure glazing to be submitted to in writing to the local authority. What we have here, and obviously members can debate it, and then we'll have effectively a mandate for officers.
Yes, I would
which will
be,
in line.
I would be proposing that we had a 1 metre clear from the floor up. And then obscure up to 1.8 metres, which is 5'9". And that would, I believe, gives a bit of air light into. It's higher than you suggested at 0.7 to 1 metre, and then is that something that we could all live with?
I'm quite happy to propose that we accept Louisa's proposal, because I think that's a happy halfway. I think it's a good compromise. So you have a portion of clear glass, you have a portion of completely obscured glass, and then you have a portion of partially obscured glass.
Okay.
As I previously said, my suggestion today would be obviously for you to vote on that basis.
Yes.
But the proposal to be to delegate
Submitted to you
to
in
put
writing.
a condition basically stating that the obscure glazing details should be submitted in writing, and maybe put an informative on the planning decision to say that we expect to see obscure glazing details in line with X, Y, and Z. And can you delegate that informative to
I
myself?
would propose that we accept the proposal from the applicant.
Yes. I'm happy to propose or second, Chair.
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Okay, so did you put your hand up first, Councillor Huffer?
I always put my hand up. But
Well, in which case then it will be proposed by me and seconded by Councillor Huffer. And does anybody, while we're still, yes, I was just going to move to that. Councillor Wilson. You're in a muddle.
Certainly think we ought to be accepting this. I think it's a good idea. But I don't think I actually did put my hand up for this one. I think it was for an earlier one. Thanks.
Still on questions.
Yes, we're still on. You seem to still be on questions. Not questions. This is debate, not questions. Still on questions.
For ages.
And who is your question to?
My question is. My question is to Phil. First of all, this debate about the windows and things. One could actually change around the meeting rooms with the office rooms on that floor quite easily, and the loos can go on the outside as well. So that's one way. Anyway, that's a possibility. I don't see why it can't be traded off the meeting rooms. Anyway, my other questions were to do with electric charging, EV points. Are there going to be any EV points on this?
Yes.
It's a perfect place to have them because it's a sort of 1 hour wait perhaps for.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, but I believe that electric vehicle charging points would be along this aspect of the parking lot. Yeah.
Okay, then the other question is, why aren't we, because the parapet is, I think, 1400 millimeters higher than the roof. Why aren't we having solar panels there, PV panels, both for maybe even for heating as well as for electric provision? And another question then also is, it looks like very nice materials are required. What about the insulation? Are we going to have very good insulation on this from the outset, or are we going to sort of try and get away with the minimum?
Shall I answer this one? Ashley Seymour from Assura. So we're the developer and investor in the new medical centre. So EV charging, there will be 10 spaces that provided. So we do have EV charging. I think they're on the plans. PV on the roof, there will be PV on the roof. I think that, again, I think they are part of the pack on the roof plan, but you may not have seen them. I've got them in here. But we are planning on PV, so that the whole approach to the development will be a net zero carbon approach, and targeting net zero carbon in operation. So putting solar panels on the roof is sort of part and parcel of that strategy. And then insulation, again, part of the net zero carbon and BREEAM excellent strategy is to make sure it's as efficient as possible. So we'll have the lowest U values that we could possibly get on a development, which means higher efficiency.
0.1 value for the walls.
Indeed.
And for the glazing?
I'll have to consult my sustainability consultant, but yeah, we'll be going through that in detail.
Okay, thank you.
We are still on questions to the officer, Councillor Huffer. Are you? Councillor Wilson.
I was going to ask, how quickly will this start being built? I mean, is it going to have to wait for the Eastern Gateway to actually happen, or is it going to be built straight away?
That's the $1 million question, and how long is a piece of string question, I suspect. There are elements through the Section 106 for the Eastern Gateway, which will involve the handover of that land, because obviously the land at the moment is outside of the applicant's control. Clearly, as officers, we will be working as hard as we can to get that Section 106 in a sign and sealable position as soon as possible, but I couldn't possibly want to commit to dates. But I think it's in everyone's interests, both the Eastern Gateway and the medical centre, that we work hard and get that done as soon as possible.
So we are now on debate, and I'm going to start, it seems there's very little opposition, I'm going to start the debate by a proposal that we accept the officer's recommendation with the caveat that it is subject to final adjustment by the planning manager, and that adjustment will be the suggestions as made by the applicant. Does anyone want to add to that, or looking for a second accounts? Yes, you were quick.
I'm happy to second, Chair, and I would just like to thank Steplow Medical Trust on behalf of the residents of Fordham, Isleham, Chippenham, because you do a fantastic job, and they really, really rely on you. Thank you. Happy to second, Chair.
2 points, Bill. Sorry. 2 points, Bill. Sorry. First thing, just a clarification on the proposal. It is just for more for layers benefit for the minutes, that it will be to delegate to myself, delegated authority to amend the condition with regards to obscure glazing to a scheme that requires details to be submitted, and then the addition of a informative outlining as per the minutes what Louisa has outlined as our expectation. Clear.
So we're clear that you are going to recommend the conditions as the applicant is suggested.
Well, what we need to do is we need obviously to have those details submitted to us for formal consideration, because they're not being proposed as part of this application. I know that's a technical point, but it's just the route we have to go through. And the reason I'm suggesting that an informative is put on is so that everyone has clear expectations as to what is expected to be submitted, and to provide a mandate for officers of that is what we are expected to approve, because that is what members are looking for. I
rather suspect we've got a unanimous decision ahead of us.
Bill, before we go on, sorry, the officer, Catherine, had one point which she wanted to clarify, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If, for the purposes of minuting, if we could just ask Louisa from the medical centre to repeat what their proposal was in terms of the heights and the differences in obscure glazing, so that we can add that to the informative.
But I think that would be good, yes, if you would.
Do you want me to repeat that now? Sure. Okay. So clear glazing from 0 to 700 mil. Is it okay if I just do metric, please? And then fully obscured from 700 to 1600. And then partially obscured, we can agree the pattern, from 1600 to 1800.
No, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
since we seem to be of one mind, I think it would be rather nice if we could just say we've all agreed it. We've all agreed it. It's unanimous.
So I must put my hand up.
Yes. Well, if you, we're still at the stage where if you were in opposition, you could express it.
Of an opposition.
Okay, so we are all unanimous. Thank you. So the planning, it is awarded. We still have, we thank you very much for coming. And I know it's been a long struggle for you, but eventually we've got there. And you can leave now because we've got a couple of non-exciting matters to deal with. One.
That's it.
Have we got?
We've got this time.
No, we haven't got any. So in which case, we haven't got the details that we normally have, so the meeting is closed.
I'm gonna run.
Don't blame you.
Quite literally.
Yeah, okay.